Patience. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but I'm going to call us to order at 6:02, and please stand for the flag salute. If we could get a roll call, please.
Commissioner Skavdal,
It looks like he
I'm
should.
going to promote him to panelist.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, thank you. I'll roll call everyone else and then come back.
Okay.
Commissioner Levy,
Here.
Commissioner Mulder,
Here.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Here.
Commissioner West,
Here.
Commissioner Curriasi,
Here.
Commissioner McFarland,
Here.
Commissioner Skavdal. I might have to unmute
Ivor,
him.
you're muted.
Okay. Okay.
Try it again.
Commissioner Skavdal, Commissioner Skavdal,
We seem to be having some technical difficulties. Commissioner Skavdal is on Zoom. He did communicate with us today that he is ill and didn't want to come and share that. And so under the rules, it is possible to attend in that circumstance.
I did speak to him on the phone too, and I would definitely say he did not sound.
I am present,
Perfect.
thank you.
and I can turn on my video if you want. Necessary.
I think he's asking, is that necessary under the rules?
Normally, that is necessary, yes, Commissioner Skavdal, and you do need to identify if you're by yourself or if there's anybody else over 18 in the room with you.
Okay, I am in my home office, with, door closed. My wife is in the home, but she's not, with me on this call. And I cannot start my video because the host has stopped it.
Okay. Well, we will
You have
take
to allow
that.
me to open. There we go.
So I'd say to take that as Commissioner Skavdal present and participating, and in his own company is the way I'd hear that. So we'd move on to chair and vice chair nomination. In the past, usually I think we do one at a time. Is that past precedent? So I would make the motion to make Ivor Skavdal chair.
I'll be happy to second that motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
I'm sorry, we have to do a roll call.
Oh, my apologies. We will do a roll call because
Who seconded?
I did.
Thank you. Commissioner Scavdall,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi,
Yes.
Commissioner McFarland.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Motion carries, so then we bring on discussion of vice chair. I believe it goes by seniority as kind of our unspoken rule. So
Yeah.
Commissioner Levy, I'm going to leave it to you to make the nomination.
Sure. I did not speak with any of the other commissioners about this, but
Neither did I, and I almost did.
in the spirit of honoring that tradition of letting the longest-serving person have the right of first refusal, and I think
I
Commissioner
refuse.
O'Neill has already said that she's not interested, I would nominate Commissioner West to be vice chair.
I would second that. Any discussion? Okay, so we will do a roll call as well.
Commissioner Scavdall,
Yes.
Commissioner McFarland,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Motion carries. Okay, so
Thanks very much to Commissioner Scavdall and West for stepping into those roles.
it's a lot of fun.
And thank you to our outgoing chair.
Absolutely. Big thanks to Chair Mulder, who has done an excellent job, I think, in the past year.
Now I don't have to, about, I guess. Yeah.
Time flies.
Director, do we have any agenda modifications?
Yes, we do, Chair. One of the things we'd like to ask is if the commission would consider going back to something that was historically done, but recently it has been the practice to move items pulled from consent to the end of the agenda. Normally, these items are more simple, but tonight, public hearing items are numerous and likely to be long. And there is at least one item on the agenda which is due to come off consent, which is Renewable America. And that does have some implications with Redwood Community Energy Authority and providing solar power to the community. And so we would ask that just for the benefit of that project needing to be done by the end of this year, that you would consider moving the consent calendar up above the public hearing items.
I would have no problem doing that. Is there any opposition from the commission? Nope. So then, so just to be clear, any items removed from consent we will hear before any of the public hearings. So we do have the discretion to make those modifications, and that's what we will be doing. So as I call, I'm just going to be clear, as I call out the different projects on consent, if somebody in the room wants to talk about those, or anyone on Zoom wants to talk about those, please raise your hand in person or on Zoom. Those will be pulled off consent, and then we will hear those items after consent. So first off is number 1, review and approval of the October 3rd action summary. Is there anyone on the commission who wants to have that pulled? Anyone in the room? Anyone on Zoom? Seeing none, that'll stay on. Item number 2, MIB 2 LLC conditional use permit and special permit in the Miranda area. Is there anyone that would, on the commission? So Commissioner Curriasi, that'll be pulled. Okay. So number 3, 10 Redwoods LLC conditional use permit and special permit. This is a denial of conditional use permit. Is there anyone on the commission that wants to see that pulled? Anyone in the room that wants to see that pulled?
You've got a hand up.
And I got a room out here, okay, so that will be pulled. Item number 4, I believe staff is asking to pull that, is that correct?
We're not necessarily asking for, we expect it to be pulled.
Okay, so item number 4, anyone on the commission want to pull that?
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner West, okay. So, if if I'm reading this right, we have 4 items on consent, and we are going to make a motion only to approve item number 1.
I motion to approve item number 1 and pull items 2, 3, and 4 from the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
Okay. And a motion and a second. Can we please get a roll call vote?
Commissioner McFarland,
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner Scabdall,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay.
Chair Mulder,
Yes.
did we skip public comment on non-agenda?
I 100% did. I will backtrack. And before we do that, let's do public comment on non-agenda items. Thanks for catching that.
No worries.
Anyone in the room want to speak on public comment on non-agenda items? Seeing no one making their way to the podium. I'm going to Zoom. Anyone on Zoom? I'm seeing 2 hands. So first off, 7108. My apologies for skipping past that.
I didn't press for to speak now. This is for an item being pulled from the consent. So
Okay.
I can speak then.
This would just be on non-agenda items. If you want to speak on one of the items that got pulled, just wait till we bring that hearing up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item, are ending in 2223. You're unmuted.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Good evening. This is Craig Johnson, and my wife and I own and operate Alpenglow Farms here in southern Humboldt. And I just want to drop a quick comment about trellis netting, and I feel we need to have some discussion about that in a positive way. It's a very, very useful tool. We have some that has been in operation and existence on our farm for over 8 years. We wrap it up and store it appropriately over the off season. And yeah, I look forward to adding more comment to this when it comes around in the future, but I'm definitely an advocate for keeping that piece of equipment around on the farms. I feel it's very necessary for operations. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Seeing no other hands on Zoom, we will close public comment on non-agenda items, and we will move to items pulled from consent, starting with item number 2, MIB2 LLC conditional use permit and special permit. That was pulled by a commissioner. Do you want a full staff report, or is there clarifying questions?
I think a staff report would be useful.
Okay, sounds good. Staff, we turn it over to you.
Hi there, my name is Colin Slavey, and I am presenting the project known as PLN 11543. It's a conditional use permit. The applicant is a company called MIB2 LLC. Where do I see it? It's just here. Excellent. Thus.
Laura, can we, thank you.
Okay, excellent. The parcel is in the Ettersburg area at the end of Upper Thomas Road. The project is a conditional use permit for 33,000 square feet of existing outdoor commercial cannabis cultivation. A special permit is required as the project is within 600 feet of public lands, which are managed for open space. The project also includes a 3,160 square foot ancillary nursery, which does use artificial lighting. The project also includes an on-site relocation of existing cultivation areas to environmentally superior locations and involves restoration of decommissioned sites. The estimated annual water use.
Hold on for a sec.
Okay.
How did that happen? Working through some technical difficulties, just have some patience with us, please.
Okay. I think we're going to wait for John to come back over. The water resources used by MIB2 are approximately 200,000 gallons of water each year, which is sourced from rainwater catchment and an on-site permitted well. The water storage available on site is approximately 272,500 gallons, 250,000 gallons of which is the pond, and the remaining is 9 2,500 gallon water tanks. Pond serves about 125% of the water demand. Foreshadowing, the original application included permitting 23,250 square feet of outdoor cultivation and 10,000 square feet of mixed light cultivation. When we sent out referrals, the project description included the mixed light. Here is a overhead view of the parcel. The southwest catty corner parcel is the parcel which is managed for public lands. Here is the site plan. This is the consolidated cultivation area. It does not show the areas to be remediated, but I'll get to that a little bit later. It includes both the existing cultivation as well as the proposed propagation area and the proposed cultivation area that's going to be relocated. It also includes, since this came up during the review of the project, the location of the well, the direction of the water lines, the location of water meters, because there is domestic use on site, and in order to parse it out, we made sure to be aware of that. Okay, now one of the significant or important elements of the project is historic timber conversion. The site experienced between 2010 and 2016 a total of 2.47 acres of timberland, which were converted for agricultural use without review or approval, and an additional 0.24 acres were converted between 2020 and 2022. Conversion occurred at 7 sites. As you can see, I guess, I don't know how well you can see it, but there is the change over time. The 0.24 acres of the land converted after 2022 will be retained as cultivation area by proxy of approximately 0.42 acres, which will be decommissioned and restocked with timber. An additional 0.87 acres experienced tree removal, but the timberland wasn't converted to another use. That's the area which is to the south of the cultivation site. I'm just going to do that really quick. The area to the south of the cultivation site. The recommendation from the registered professional forester is that that area be allowed to naturally revegetate. It includes the removal of all non-native material except solar panels, and again, that it regenerates without further disturbance. Here is the timber conversion over time from before 2016 to 2016 to 2020 to 2022. Next, water resources. The applicant submitted appropriate documents for water resource protection and regulation. Again, the estimated annual water use is 200,000 gallons. The water storage provided is 275,000 gallons. An LSAA was prepared, and it involves cannabis and non-cannabis encroachments, including a point of diversion, which has since been decommissioned, the pond spillway, a decommissioning and remediation of a graded flat, and stream crossings, as well as the removal of some ancillary infrastructure like water pipes and old tanks. Additionally, a site management plan was prepared, which regulates and protects the local watershed and regulates runoff. Additionally, the original cultivation areas were within riparian setbacks, but again, after providing a justification and a plan for relocation, the cultivation area was moved outside of those setbacks to a more appropriate location in the center of the parcel. Biological resources. At least one known spotted owl activity center occurs within 0.9 miles of the cultivation site. This is to the southwest. There was a special visit by CDFW a couple of months ago, a second visit, because they had concerns about some of the conditions on site, as well as the rather complicated lake and streambed alteration agreement. It involved a variety of concerns, including the installation of wildlife exit ramps on the catchment pond and the bullfrog management plan. Now, the reason I mentioned earlier that mixed light cultivation was part of the original project description is because CDFW was operating with the assumption that mixed light would be continuing on site. And so some of the recommendations that they provided was that supplemental lighting, although the nursery does continue to use it, but the mixed light cultivation adhered to dark sky standards, that it was appropriately shielded so there was no light pollution, which disturbs and can affect northern spotted owl, as I'm sure you're aware. There was a requirement to limit the use of synthetic netting, as well as some of the other issues that I discussed in the LSAA section. 2 days ago, we received a referral response from the Bureau of Land Management with similar concerns. I'll go into that in just a moment, but generally, as the lands which we're issuing a special permit for reducing the setback to are managed by BLM, their comments are relevant. Their concerns are as follows. The proximity of the cultivation has the potential to deliver nutrients and other pollutants to the adjacent watercourses, tributaries of the Eel. Most of the property falls within the 600-foot setback, or most of the cultivation, excuse me, falls within the 600-foot setback from BLM lands, and they requested that we uphold the setback which exists in the cannabis cultivation, or the CMMLUO, Cannabis Medical Marijuana Land Use Ordinance, and maintain those 600-foot setbacks. The BLM also suggested that as the land is designated as critical habitat for northern spotted owl, it's, again, important to consider the potential impacts. And finally, they suggested that the reason they want to maintain that 600-foot setback is because if any activity or resource damage related to the controlled substance operations occurs, that's a violation of the Controlled Substances Act, They're a federal agency. Commentary on this topic. We discussed water resources and the effort that the applicant went through to file the appropriate documentation and engage in the necessary agreements to protect water resources, their LSAA and their site management plan. Their enrollment with the State Water Resources Control Board was demonstrated with a notice of applicability, which is, if adhered to, a measure which limits the potential for the project to deliver nutrients and pollutants to the adjacent watercourses. Second, as recommended by my supervisors, reducing the 600-foot setback with a special permit is within the purview of the Planning Commission. So that's a decision that you can make, while considering, of course, that BLM suggested they want to maintain that setback. It's not a requirement. Third, the concerns about the potential impacts to northern spotted owl are addressed by the limit, or by the requirement to limit the volume of operations to below 50 decibels. The requirement to use blackout tarps when engaged in mixed light cultivation, which again is no longer relevant, or the use of artificial lights after sundown, which is disturbing to northern spotted owl. And when CDFW provided their response, they suggested to restrict the site to only outdoor cultivation, which at this point the project description has shifted, so that is the case. Finally, as a response and commentary to number 4, respecting property boundaries and obeying federal law is unnegotiable. And as far as the potential for the operator to impact the land controlled by the BLM, it's important to be aware of the fact that property boundaries in federal law is important to obey. But the operation, the cannabis cultivation, is occurring on the operator's property. The next element of the project is on-site relocation and restoration. 10,000 square feet of cultivation was relocated on-site. The relocated cultivation areas are consolidated with other cultivation on the parcel, and the original cultivation clearings are to be restocked. Red arrow from point A to point B, consolidated in the greater cultivation area. This is what it looks like today. The recommendation is that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution, which does the following. Finds the Planning Commission has considered the mitigated negative declaration previously adopted for the commercial medical marijuana land use ordinance and the addendum prepared for the MIB2 LLC project. That the Planning Commission finds the proposed project complies with the general plan and the zoning ordinance, and that the Planning Commission approves the MIB2 LLC conditional use permit subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
Are there any clarifying questions from the commission?
Thank you. Through the chair. Thank you very much for that presentation. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. Just on the BLM's comments, I appreciate you going over those in detail. And just to confirm that if the project maintained the 600-foot setback, then BLM felt like that would address their concerns regarding runoff.
That is a great question. I'm not sure what the BLM's response would be to that suggestion.
Thank you. Also, I have another question regarding CAL FIRE's response. They did, regarding the restocking, they did pose the question of who will ensure restocking is completed. And I wanted to ask clarity on, is that county staff?
It is, yes. Would you like more details?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay.
And lastly, thank you for the clarification on the shift from mixed light to outdoor only. And I noticed that there wasn't sort of a standard element in the conditions regarding renewable energy. And so I was curious, I think in the staff report, the projected energy use per day probably reflects mixed light, not outdoor. Does the existing solar system, is that anticipated to meet the energy demands such that a condition for renewable energy is not required? Is that why it was left out?
That's a good question. Because this project is being approved under the CMMLUO, the use of a generator, and that it was existing cannabis cultivation, the suggestion that the generator be used, or would be used in some circumstances, wasn't necessarily conditioned. How do I rephrase this?
Well, it is conditioned.
Oh, you're right. It is conditioned. Condition number 12 says that no later than January 1st, 2026, electricity for the cannabis operation shall be provided by PG&E or from renewable sources, and that the generator will be used for emergencies only.
Looks like I missed it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Those are all my questions.
Okay. Commissioner Levy?
I guess I will just ask a sort of follow-up. It sounds like you haven't had a conversation with the BLM representatives who sent this referral response just a couple days ago. But I guess what I was trying to understand better is if that referral, if you know, was based on the earlier proposed project that included, that had not yet incorporated some of the changes or conditions that were suggested by CDFW. My understanding is that all of the CDFW recommendations were adopted into the conditions. I guess that's a question.
One thing that I want to make clear, this wasn't actually, I wouldn't call this a referral. So this project was referred to BLM quite some time ago.
Right.
And it doesn't look like we had received a response. So what this was, we believe, was them responding to the public notice of hearing, which means that they would have been taking the current project description, which is outdoor.
Which is outdoor.
Yes.
And which incorporates the protections that CDFW sought for NSO habitat. Those were, I believe, incorporated fully.
They are, yes.
Yeah.
So we haven't, because this came yesterday, we haven't had a chance to talk with BLM to see if that would address their concerns. I think if you notice, it does say they want to see that impacts are addressed, which we believe they are, but they are also suggesting that in addition to that, the 600 feet should be respected.
Sure. Okay. And then, so that's helpful. I guess I have two other additional questions I realized. The first is, I mean, we have reviewed and permitted many, many, many projects that did in fact fall within 600 feet of federal lands or state land, federal lands in particular here. Maybe more often Forest Service than BLM, but certainly quite a number of BLM nearby to BLM projects too. I guess I'm trying to understand if this response is sort of a form response that would be sent out to any project where the 600-foot reduction was sought, or if their concerns are a little bit more particular to the BLM lands that are immediately adjacent to this project. It doesn't, that may be hard for you to answer, but I guess I am asking if there's a track record of usually getting a similar response from BLM or not usually, and therefore this one is maybe a singular concern.
So you're right, it's kind of hard to anticipate exactly what is driving this from them because we haven't communicated with them. But there are other sites that have been approved right in the vicinity here that also were approved for the 600-foot setback, which they did not comment on. Mm-hmm. And so, again, hard to really understand what it is. It may be a change in management, maybe a change in approach from mm-hmm. them, or it may just be that this one popped up on their radar and they wanted to provide this comment on this one.
Okay.
But again, you know, I think the crux of it, and Colin, I think, did a really good job of walking through why we believe that the impacts that they're concerned about are going to be, you know, essentially mitigated to something where it wouldn't be impacting the species that might exist on that property. Mm-hmm. So whether it's 600 feet away or more or less, the impacts, we believe, can be addressed. One of the ones he mentioned that I think is really important is the noise standard. So 50 decibels at the edge of the forest habitat, which is going to be really close because there's forest habitat on that property. That's something that they're going to need to maintain for the life of the project. And 50 decibels is a pretty low level of noise.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Any other questions from the commissioners? So I just want to clarify a couple things real quick to make sure I heard before I go to take testimony. There was 3 or 4 concerns with their letter. One of them is federal law, so you can't mitigate that. What I heard what staff present was the 50 decibels. They believe that's going to protect spotted owl habitat, and the site management plan would mitigate and protect any potential runoff. I just want to clarify that's what I heard and what staff believes.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to go to the applicant. I'm going to limit all applicants to 10 minutes today because we have 8 projects. 10 minutes, yes. We have 8 projects, so that's 80 minutes of just presentations.
I got it.
10 minutes presentations of applicants. They'll still get 5 minutes of rebuttal, so 15 at the end. So is the applicant here and want to move to the podium, please? So this is opening the public comment process.
Yes, I'm Suzanne from Margro Advisors. We are the consultant on this project. For sake of saving time, there really aren't any additional comments I need to make. I think the presentation speaks for itself, but I do want to point out Commissioner Levy's comment about how many special permits have been on BLM land approvals and I do think that maybe Mr. Johnson covered it. There's been a change of organization, someone new in the position. It's very unusual to get this. I've been on the property. The property is fine.
Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? Okay, so now we're in public comment. Anyone in the room want to speak on this? Please come to the podium. Nobody in the room. I'm going to Zoom. 7108. You're unmuted. I can't hear you. It's making the thing like there's talking, but I'm not hearing anything. Yeah. Although we've been asked not to mention names, and that's why I was avoiding doing that. That's actually, Commissioner Curriozzi just came up with a really good idea. Commissioner Scavdall, can you speak and see if we can hear you? Nope, we cannot hear Commissioner Scavdall, so we have a mild
Could we
technical.
take a break for a couple minutes?
I'm going to take a 5 to 10 minute recess depending on our technical difficulties here. I apologize, so we're going to take a break and come back. 6:58 PM. We're coming back in from recess. Thank you for your patience as we dealt with those technical difficulties. We are still on MIB2 LLC conditional use permit and special permit. And 7108, you should be up. You are unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I just had a clarifying question. Is this an outdoor that's full sun, or is it outdoor in hoop houses, or with light depth or not, and using fans or other devices? So those were my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other commenters on Zoom that would like to speak? Okay, we got one more. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is Kelly with Margaret Advisors. I just wanted to remind the commissioners that this application has been in the process since 2016. I believe the farm existed prior to 2014. So regarding the northern spotted owl, we do believe that this farm is living in harmony with the local wildlife and habitat. And I would like to just remind you also that there is a significant amount of environmental regulations that this farm has to follow, including water quality, with enrollment in the water board, which does require annual reporting and is subject to inspection, as well as Fish and Wildlife, which was mentioned that they visited the site recently. So there is no violations or outstanding issues that we've seen that would cause any concern. And as was mentioned, BLM does not normally comment on these. So this sounds like they're starting to feel more comfortable with responding to requests regarding cannabis farms, but it is still scheduled to, and so normally they have not been part of the conversation. So we don't believe that this is an issue because it does have proper oversight from existing regulations and ongoing inspections from those agencies. We just wanted to make that point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom that wants to speak? Seeing none, I will bring it back to the room. Does the applicant want to speak any rebuttal, or are you good? Good. Okay, so public comment will be closed. Does staff have anything they want to clarify from public comment?
I can clarify the question about the type of outdoor cultivation occurring. And its current configuration, cultivation is occurring in hoop houses, greenhouses, with fans.
Without supplemental lighting, though, correct? So
Correct.
That, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Commission, do you have any questions? Commissioner Curriasi?
I guess I don't have questions, just more comments.
Okay.
So I think I appreciate Commissioner Levy about that, the background regarding other projects that have been approved within less than 600 feet. So I think given that context and then also the sort of the absence of response from BLM, I feel comfortable with that piece of it of being less than 600 feet.
Thank you.
I think in my experience in the past, when I've been, primarily when I remember being part of discussions before about the reducing the setback, I have been supportive because we haven't received comment from BLM, and it is unusual for us to receive comment in my experience. And so I think because of that, and without speculating as to why, and without having more information, I have to go with what's in front of me, and what's in front of me is that that BLM is requesting that we uphold the 600-foot setback. So I personally will, I would like to see the project uphold the 600-foot setback.
I'll just echo what Commissioner West said. I think we had their 600 feet request also from CDFW, and even if it is unusual for BLM to comment, they commented this time, and so I would agree with what you said, Commissioner West.
My question is going to be staff back to policy. And I'm gonna ask some questions, and I could be wrong. I'm totally fine with being wrong. My understanding of that 600 feet, for it to be more upheld, was more of like a public resource that's used, like a picnic area or a trail or some sort of public, that there's members of the public frequenting that area. That's when that 600 foot was more of a concern, but I also could be wrong.
You're almost correct. So the ordinance has a 600-foot setback, and it allows it to be reduced with the express written consent of the landowners who have the setback when it is a public, I forget the exact language, but there's a trail or a public park or something of that nature. Similar to churches, there's a 600-foot setback from churches. You can only reduce it if that church allows for, agrees to reduce the setback. For lands that are managed for open space and wildlife, it allows for that setback to be reduced with the special permit, regardless of the input from that landowner. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be taking that input into consideration. It's just that it's a little bit of a less of a threshold, let's say.
Okay. And then just to piggyback on that, I asked this before we went to public comment, but staff believes that the resources that the governmental agency was concerned about, those issues are mitigated with the project.
We do,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say that I have a lot of respect for the federal land management agencies. I'm inclined to give a lot of deference to their requests, but I do feel that this one puts us in a bit of a tricky situation for this comment, which is not even a proper referral response, to come literally the day before the public hearing, when the project has been in the works for, as I understand it, about 8 years. And there was the opportunity for them to comment through the referral channels at a time when it would have been a lot easier to incorporate the feedback. So I guess that makes me feel somewhat torn about what to do with this. I do want to ask, though, I know this was just received, but would it be, I mean, as I understand it, it's not just the cultivation area, but most of the parcel itself lies within 600 feet? No, okay, so then, no, that's, maybe I misheard something, but then I guess what I would like to understand a little bit better is, could it be reconfigured? I mean, what would it take to reconfigure the cultivation areas so that they were no longer within that 600-foot buffer?
The distance from the public lands to the cultivation area is about 430 feet. The clearing that existed prior to 2016 is 100% within 600 feet. The entire parcel is forested, and therefore, if we were to require a 600-foot setback from public lands, it would disqualify the project completely.
Because it couldn't be done without clearing forests, which they're not allowed to do.
Exactly.
That would be a new precedent that we have not done before. For context, could I share my screen and show the GIS of the site? So this, let's see, this is the parcel. Oh, that's too small. Sorry. This is the parcel right here. This is the BLM parcel. This is an approved cannabis site. This is the BLM parcel. This is a private parcel, this is a private parcel. So we're literally talking about two parcels that are corner to corner between the applicant and the BLM parcel. So for context, I mean, we're talking about really this area that would be habitat, and the 50-foot decibel reading would be measured at the edge of the forest, which would be at the edge of the clearing on this parcel. So the off-site impacts become very, very small when you consider, when you consider the relationship of this parcel, what's going on this parcel, to where the BLM parcels are. I just thought that that was worth looking at, because it's not like we're talking about this being right up against the entirety of a property line. It's not. They're literally corner to corner.
Thank you. Commissioner Scavdall, I saw you unmuted. Do you want to say anything there?
No, I'm listening to the comments. I'm supportive of the project. I do think it's been unfortunate BLM's comments came in quite late, and they didn't actually, other than saying that they want us to honor the 600-foot setback, they didn't actually specifically identify any particular impacts as a result of that. We have reduced those setbacks in the past where we can mitigate any impacts. It appears we're doing that in this case here. I appreciate Director Ford's comment that we're just really dealing with a small triangular piece that would fall within that 6-foot, 100-foot setback area on the adjacent BLM land. I don't think moving a piece of project would change any of the mitigations that we're already attaching to this project. It wouldn't change it one way or the other. So I'm willing to support the project as is and as staff has recommended, with no additional conditions.
Okay. Any other comments? Commissioner O'Neill?
So, did you say in the beginning, I mean, I heard you say a lot of things, but did you say that the reason why they were opposed to the reduction was because there was a potential of runoff onto the BLM properties or to the river? Is that what you said?
The concerns from BLM were that there was a risk of the project introducing pollutants and nutrients into the
And is
watershed.
the project at a higher elevation than the BLM property?
Would you mind putting on topography really quick?
It is.
It is. It is.
So how have they mitigated for that potential runoff?
Right. So the so the site management plan, which is a document which assesses the road systems as well as the potential for runoff from watering activities, suggests best management practices, including wattling on the edges of cultivation areas. I don't think that it includes like particular types of fertilizers in the project, but the types of fertilizers which are allowed are distinct. I think it's mostly the site management plan. It addresses the potential for watering runoff to go down into the watershed, and provides best management practices to reduce that
Can you
runoff,
define that?
which was vague. But if you would like me to find the specifics.
Commissioner O'Neill, what were you saying there? I mean, I'm just going to ask questions so that way I'm not giving testimony to staff.
So best management practices are multifold. One is that fertilizers, anything that would be hazardous to wildlife, must be stored in a container and be contained. So they're not exposed directly to rain. They're not exposed directly to anything that would wash them downslope. Well, but in this particular case, one of the things that's happening is that the plants are being grown within greenhouses. So all of the fertilization, any other kinds of materials that are used within the context of a greenhouse. These are not spray irrigated. They're typically drip irrigated within a greenhouse. So it's not like that, and water is very carefully controlled in a cannabis context so that there's not a lot of water running off. We spend a lot of time evaluating how much water is used so that there is a good balance between the water needed for a plant and the water used, and that we're not wasting water, and also making sure there's sufficient water without creating other impacts to either surface water or groundwater. And so in this context, the fact that they aren't hoop houses actually is a benefit to water quality, because it further separates the use of fertilizers or pesticides and other things that are also highly controlled. You can't just put any old thing on a cannabis plant and have that cannabis plant available for public consumption. So the greenhouses then protect it from rain, keep it separate from runoff. So everything really is contained on the site. And then, as Colin mentioned, there is also the requirement to have the perimeter of the site contained. And then there's areas on the site that are maybe natural swales. There may be artificial things such as bales or wattles that keep the runoff from just free-flowing out into a stream.
Could we not just have inspection, you have inspections anyway, but those inspections could call attention if there was some failing in the process that was out of control that needed to be corrected. I don't know if BLM is involved in those inspections, but I mean, it sounds like you've mitigated for it, and they have concerns, but they're just, you know, maybe not really warranted.
May I? My other capacity at the Planning and Building Department is cannabis cultivation site inspector, and about 2 weeks ago I was actually on site looking at this project. And one of the parts of the inspection reports that I prepare is making sure that erosion and runoff is controlled. And I go around the entire perimeter of the site and I look for evidence of rilling, I look for evidence of concentrated runoff or runoff at all. And if those issues do appear, I make note of it in the report. If it's a significant issue, it's considered non-compliant, and there's a requirement to resolve those violations. So we have eyes on the projects.
Does that answer your questions, Commissioner O'Neill? And the last question is, on top of the site management plan, they also have to be enrolled in the water board, which does address those issues as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I kind of feel that we've had discussion. It seems
And
like
we need to move on.
we're gonna have a split vote. So I'm gonna ask for a motion.
Let me just make one comment. I understand the justification and I appreciate the hard work you've done to put eyes on the project. I guess because this issue might come up in the future, given BLM's response now. Of course, obviously take direction from Director Ford, but if it's possible, could staff please reach out to BLM and try to remedy this for future projects in case there has been a staff change or something?
It would also, I'm going to piggyback on that. It would also be nice of governmental agency to governmental agency using the referral process and communicating in the proper referral timeline. There's a past practice of getting emails the day before a hearing.
I work for a governmental agency and I'll say that doesn't always fly and we have to respect comments when they come in at the 11th hour. But if staff could proactively, of course, take direction from John, not myself, if you could get ahead of this, that would be wonderful.
We normally do, and we will try. Sometimes it's not possible.
I just meant in the general sense, like if you could have a general conversation with BLM, hey, we've noticed you've come up with this 600 limit setback, like can we talk about for future permits so that we, not necessarily site specific, that's what I meant.
I don't want to belabor this, but we've had that conversation several times.
Commissioner Curriasi.
I also just have 4 requested quick changes to resolution, but I'm happy to do that after motion during discussion either way.
Is that you making a motion with those 4 changes?
That sounds great. Do you want me to include the changes in the motion or discuss them?
Please do.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to adopt the resolution for MIB2, which finds the Planning Commission has considered the MND previously adopted for this project, finds the proposed project complies with the general plan and zoning ordinance, and approves MIB2 conditional use permit subject to the recommended conditions of approval. And I would like to add the requested following changes to the resolution. 1, simply updating finding 5G. It references an X-X requirement, so just referencing the correct one. Updating resolution finding 5H, and bringing that in alignment with the condition of approval that they're conditioned for renewable energy. Updating finding 5I, that just needs to be corrected to match this project. It references the wrong condition. And correct finding 6E to add dark sky compliance.
I will happily second that motion and thank you for catching those inconsistencies.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, so now we will go to a roll call.
Commissioner McFarland,
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
No.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner Scavdall.
Yes.
Thank you, motion carried.
Motion carries, thank you. So now we will move to 10 Redwoods LLC, conditional use permit and special permit, where this is a denial. So I'm gonna ask staff give us a presentation of the denial, and then the applicant will.
Okay, good evening, commissioners and member of the public attending. Tonight, before you is a denial for a conditional use permit for cannabis cultivation. I've got a short presentation. This is a somewhat unusual situation where this project was slated for approval at the October 3rd meeting, and there was a fire on October 2nd. So we'll just go through the presentation here. Record number PLN 11737 CUP, 10 Redwoods, conditional use permit. So this project is located in far eastern Humboldt County on the north side of the Mad River Valley, I guess I call it. The project is accessed, you can see that small yellow thumbtack. Project is accessed by going through Trinity County, back west along River Road to 8 Mile Ridge Road. This is an outline of the project. It's 11,700 square feet of pure full sun outdoor cultivation. The irrigation water is sourced from a point of diversion and a 300,000 gallon rainwater catchment pond. Drying occurs on site, all other processing off-site, 3 employees. There is on-site relocation proposed with the project. Power is currently provided by generators. Renewable power is conditioned by 2026. And there is a special permit for the use of a point of diversion. This is a close-up in terms of the access to the parcel. You can see the Mad River at the bottom of the screen. or the map. The purple line is the access to the project. The road, 8 Mile Ridge Road, goes up in a winding, steep way up to the parcel, which is highlighted in blue. And later on, we're going to talk about a well that is on the parcel diagonally southeast of the highlighted blue parcel at a oxbow in the road. 8 Mile Ridge Road, project is conditioned to join and participate in a road maintenance association. There's several other parcels on this road. There are some identified deficiencies in terms of the maintenance. I visited the parcel on August 21st of this year with California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And so this is us taking a look at some erosion that's occurring on the road. This is the site plan, and these are awful hard to read on the screen, but just a quick synopsis. The two relocation areas or the retirement areas, I should say, are located on the northern portion of the parcel. These two areas are being relocated down next to the existing residence, kind of in a yellow highlighted area in the middle of the map there. The relocation is occurring because the cultivation is adjacent to or partially in streamside management areas. This is the proposed relocation area. There's an existing residence on the parcel. The residence is not really included as part of the cannabis project. But when we talk about the fire occurred, did not burn the house, but it did burn the area kind of behind where those vehicles are parked. There's a steep ravine that you access this area with a bridge over the ravine, and the ravine area caught on fire. As far as water resources, they have 65,000 gallons roughly water right through a diversion, which is accessed in the wintertime, essentially up until May 15th, and tanks are filled. There is also a 300,000 gallon rain catchment pond, and he's got 125,000 gallons of tanks with an estimated water use of 104,750 with almost 9 gallons per square foot. During the site visit with CDFW, the CDFW staff investigated the pond. And this is a picture of the pond. You can see the upper cultivation site at the top of this picture. The CDFW made a determination that the pond is an on-stream pond. And so the conditions of approval for the October 3rd required that the applicant secure or consult with the State Water Resource Control State Water Resources Control Division of Water Rights to determine if they needed to secure a water right for this water course. There wasn't a lot of evidence of a water course, in my opinion, but it is a condition. It was a condition for the approval of the project to seek that water right. Then on October 2nd, there was a fire. This is a picture from across the valley, grabbed off of the Red-Headed Black Belt site. So the property is within the National Forest response area. And the CAL FIRE and National Forest firefighters responded. After the fire, we received comments, and I hope you can all see up there on top, I did hear from a neighbor before the fire that was concerned about activities on the property, although they wish to remain anonymous, so we can't really add that to the record. But on October 3rd, Jeremy Ward, CAL FIRE Battalion Chief, sent me an email with early details on the Bear Fire, and we ultimately received an incident report dated November 3rd, and that's included in your packet, as well as we had a comment from a neighbor who made phone and email contact and submitted written comments on November 3rd. Okay, so the reasons stated for the denial in the staff report include safety issue. The fire started at a dry building. It's the dry shed for the cannabis. The CAL FIRE report noted unsafe electrical conditions. The failure to report the fire, it's unclear at this time who exactly reported the fire. But we have neighbor testimony that the workers on site abandoned the fire without attempting to put it out, or at least sticking around to notify authorities. The other reason stated is they are not complying with the terms of their operations plan based on evidence presented by a neighbor. Neighbor responded to the fire and was on 8 Mile Ridge Road, about, I think, 20 yards off the road. They noticed a well and a generator, which is on parcel 208-241-011, which is diagonally to the southeast of the subject parcel. And fire was going on, and they said, well, we can use this water to fight the fire. So they got gas, fired up the generator, and started running the pump. Turns out there was plenty of water stored on the project. They didn't need that. But the commenter followed the pipe to the project and to some of the tanks on the subject parcel, indicating that the well was being used to fill the tanks on the subject parcel. So the recommendation, and this is kind of a hard one for me because I don't really enjoy denying a project. I have been to the site. I thought the site was clean and well run. However, I think we're unable to make the findings that the project's being operated in a safe manner that respects the safety of the neighborhood and has not provided has not provided sufficient evidence necessary to make the required findings for approval based on the water source issue. Therefore, the recommendation is to deny the conditional use permit and special permit. I know that the applicant is here tonight, Marko Tiavowski, and I'm sure he may have additional information for us. After the fire, I did call him, sent him an email, and we were kind of waiting to get his side of the story. So I think we'll hear that tonight.
Any clarifying questions from the commission? Nope. Okay, so Commissioner Scavdall, did you have any? Okay. So now I will open public comment and ask the applicant if they want to speak. They have 10 minutes at the podium.
Good evening, Director Ford and Board of Supervisors in the Planning Department. I'm Marko Tiavowski. I would like to start with first thinking of the first responders, the firefighters and the volunteers in the neighborhood that helped with fighting the fire. Due to personal medical reasons, I was unable to attain while the fire was going. my manager, my cousin Zlatko, he came as soon as he could. When I was notified by the fire, I have proof of my text that I gave instructions to the fire department to be called immediately. Therefore, I'm willing to if the workers called the fire department or not, I do not know. I'm willing to work with the community to ensure the procedures are followed from the farm and for the surroundings, that the farm will follow the procedures and the safety. Since I've spoken with a few of the neighbors, and I'm hearing their direct concerns, and we're addressing and talking about the issues that they have been concerned about. And some of them, they already they are willing to write a letter of recommendations for supporting the project. From the bottom of my heart, I ask for continuance. More evidence needs to be gathered, and I've been only the last 3 days here at the farm. And about the water, I have not given any instructions. I've run the farm for 4 years. We have plenty of water, so there's no reason why water would be taken from different well.
Is that everything, sir?
Yes.
Are there any questions from the commission? Commissioner West?
You mentioned that you had some neighbors who were interested in writing letters of support, but I don't believe that we have any letters in our record. Is that, did they not have enough time to write the letters? Is that why you're asking for a continuance?
That is correct. I'm asking for continuance, yes. So we can have those letters.
Are there any other questions?
I was just curious about were there people living in the house at the time of the fire?
There's one gentleman that works at the farm
And so, but they weren't the ones that allegedly fled when the fire started? You don't have
I
any
wasn't there, so.
So you don't have any information on why they left, or are they still under your employment?
Yes, I'm in contact, and I will get more information, and I would like to relate that.
Okay.
Mr. Levy?
Yeah, I guess I am just trying to understand a little bit better the allegation, and it is just an allegation as I understand it, that water was being drawn from another property that had not given permission. I mean, I understand you weren't there at the time of the fire, but you've been out there. Have you checked out that allegation that the water line feeding your tanks is drawing water from a well that's not your well?
No.
You haven't checked that out?
No.
When did you become aware of that allegation?
Well, recently.
Okay.
In the planning department, yeah.
So is that also a reason why you were asking for a continuance, so that you can look into that claim that your workers have been stealing water?
And of course, yeah, I'll look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McFarland?
Can I ask staff a question?
Right now, it'd just be questions directly to the applicant. Commissioner West? So for me, question to you. As an operator in Humboldt County, it's my understanding if you operate generators or anything like that, you should be in your CUPA, which is your Humboldt County Environmental Health Plan, which in that plan, you have a fire safety emergency plan. So I'm curious, do you have that for one? And for two, have your employees been trained? And the reason I ask you this is we have to make a finding of public safety. So if you have employees that know of a fire and they flee the property per the report we got, without notifying the neighbors, that's not protecting the health and safety of the neighborhood. So that's why I'm asking you this question, if you can please answer.
Yeah, they haven't been trained, no, so, sorry.
So if you're part of the applicant, you can come to the podium and speak. You have 4 more minutes.
I just wanted to address your question, Thomas, because Coupa is a condition of approval, correct?
It's technically, you're supposed to
No?
have it
Okay,
from day one.
okay. Yeah, that was all I wanted to clarify. I thought that was a condition of approval, so,
They are in conditions of approval usually, but you should be operating.
okay. Okay, I'll just add one other thing, and the reason, Marco's been my client for 5 years, and I'm here just to support the continuation so he can look into this further. He was coming to town for an approval, and Friday afternoon was when we were notified that we were going through this denial process. He's been here for 2 days. Today, he met with some neighbors, and so he's looking into those things, and I think it would be just at least appropriate to give him the time to see where we are with this and gather evidence or work with his planner and planning and Cliff and whatnot to see if there's something we can do. So,
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anything else, sir?
No, that'll be all. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. And after all the public comment, you will be allowed up to 5 minutes for any rebuttals if you would like.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak on this project? Seeing none, I will go to Zoom. Looks like we have one hand up, 7108.
Good evening. This was on the consent calendar, and if it wasn't for the fire, it probably would have been consented and given a permit. My question is, I guess somebody went out and did an inspection in August, but I'm just wondering if they checked where the generators and all of that to see if that was in compliance, since the CAL FIRE said it was with unsafe electric conditions. So I'm just wondering how this has been operating without having those things checked to make sure they're happening. Sounds like the applicant wasn't really aware that he's supposed to do that. Yeah, so it's, and also I just wanted to know if the county, when there is a fire at a permitted grow, does CAL FIRE contact the county? Is the county keeping track of how many fires are happening? And I think it's a reason that on-site inspections that happen to these applicants that have been doing their thing for the last 7 or 8 with what the rules are. And it seemed that this one still, you know, as of last couple weeks ago, was not in compliance. Had other issues that haven't been resolved. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there anyone else on Zoom that wants to speak? Seeing none, I'll come back to the room. And if the applicant wants to rebut any public comments. Now they would get an opportunity for up to 5 minutes if you want to say anything more at the podium. Otherwise, we'll close public comment and go to staff. Would you like to speak anymore? Okay. Applicant is, okay, so I'm going to close public comment and go to staff. And can we please get clarifications on, I personally think that there might have been a confusion about the consent. What I heard staff testify in the presentation was in October, it was on consent for approval. It was removed because of the fire, and tonight it was on consent for denial.
That is correct.
Okay.
So, to the chair.
No, just if you can finish the clarifying anything else. There was a couple of public comment, the questions, I think we always try to get the staff to rebut any of those or not rebut, clarify anything or
Certainly.
answer questions and then go to commission.
So, on August 21st of 2024, I did visit the site. It was not specifically a site inspection, it was a site visit. We were coordinating with CDFW, and we also had some questions about essentially this project had slipped through our cracks in terms of our interim permit process. So we wanted to get an on-site confirmation of what was happening on site. And so that was a site visit on my part. It was a site inspection for CDFW. CDFW, when they go to sites, they go through with a fine-tooth comb and they identify all the issues. Those issues were addressed in the conditions of approval for the October 3rd staff report, which is attached to this staff report as, I believe, attachment 2. So that's got all the materials that were involved in that October 3rd agenda item, which would have approved the project as a consent item. So the timeline is important to discuss. I visited the site August 21st. I was made aware through callers telling me to look at the red-headed black belt on October 2nd, and saw there actually had been 2 fires in that area. So it was a little hard initially to determine which fire we were talking about. And at that time, I did call the applicant and say, hey, what's going on your mountainside? And he wasn't really sure because he wasn't there, is my understanding. And the applicant may want to rebut that, but he wasn't sure, and that sounded like he wasn't aware that there was a fire. So we did get the email from CAL FIRE on that same day before the hearing or the day of the hearing, I can't remember. It's in the packet though. And we sent an email to the applicant asking for comment and what happened, a detailing of the situation. In that same time period, after the October 3rd hearing, we obviously pushed it forward, date certain to tonight. I did hear from the neighbor, specifically the one that commented, Mr. Paesos, who is a resident up there, and he was the one who provided eyewitness testimony from the day of the fire. Last Friday, I notified the applicant that we hadn't heard from him, and we were scheduling the item for denial. At that time, he requested me to continue the item, so we had more time to discuss the situation. And we obviously schedule these things in advance, and there was, no time to consider that request. I suggested the applicant come to the hearing tonight and participate, and so essentially the decision rests with the Planning Commission at this time.
Thank you for that, but I just want to clarify, I did hear that CAL FIRE governmental agency did contact county staff about the fire via email.
That is correct.
Thank
and subsequently, we have the incident report.
I saw that in there, so thank you. Commissioner West, I think you had your hand up first.
Thank you. I think just to clarify for the public commenter and my own curiosity now, is it standard for CAL FIRE to contact you when they're aware that there's a fire on a grow, or does the county track the fires that are happening with the permitted cannabis operations?
Well, that's a good question. There haven't really been very many fire, I mean, this is actually one of the only ones that I'm aware of. There was another one where they did contact us a couple years ago, but I would hope they would contact us. I don't believe that there are very many fires that are happening on these sites.
I'm biting my tongue right now. Commissioner O'Neill.
If you were going to approve it in August, except for this fire that happened in October, I think it should be continued. I think that you, obviously, I haven't had employees that I've trained and they'd still do stupid things. So obviously there is a lack of training there. Maybe there's a lack of a plan. I don't know. But I think that there could be some conditions put into the final recommendation if it comes back to us after you work with the owner, who obviously wasn't on the site when it happened, and there could be some reasons why the workers fled. And if you can come to an agreement on what those conditions might be to ensure there's public safety, I think you should be given an opportunity, since you were going to recommend the approval before. That's just my opinion. If you've gone this far, give them an opportunity to correct it.
Commissioner Levy?
I guess I do just have one follow-up question for Mr. Whitney. I admit I did not go back and reread the original staff report, although I do see it here. But from your site visit in August, did you, and you were with CDFW doing a site inspection, one of their primary concerns would always seem to be the water source. So I just wanted to know what you and or CDFW witnessed about the source of water that you considered worthy of recommending for approval back then. And I'm not asking you to know anything you don't know, but I'm just trying to understand a little bit better what you did see earlier that made you feel we could make the findings about sufficiency of water, because apart from the fire, which does raise a lot of concerns, this is also a pretty serious allegation that they're stealing their water. I don't know if it's true. I'm just trying to get a sense of what the evidence is one way or the other.
On paper, I feel like they documented they had adequate water supply for the project. The only, mild head scratcher I had was August 21st. There seemed to be a lot of tanks that were full with water. Obviously, that's the end of the season, and that's not what you do. And I didn't check every tank, let's say. I just checked, there's tanks. Oh, there's water in the tank, huh? But I did not, I didn't foresee this situation occurring. And perhaps that was a good lesson learned. But based on my inspection of the site, the material submitted, I felt there was adequate water for the project when I recommended approval.
Commissioner West?
Have you spoken with the owner of the well that is involved in the accusation?
That's a good question. I've not spoken with the owner of the well. The subject property that has the well on it was a cannabis applicant. Their interim permit has been suspended since 22, and so I think they've abandoned their aspirations of growing cannabis. But no, I have not spoken to that property owner. We do have their address. We may even have their phone number. I'm not sure, but I haven't done that.
In the event that we were to continue this with the request to for time for more evidence, would it be part of staff's process to pursue more information about the well situation? What does it look like to investigate this kind of allegation from staff side?
One of the things that we could do is go out and see if we could verify that there is pipes running, to the neighbor's well. Presumably, it would be cleaned up by that time. And so I think it's going to be very hard for us to verify that. There was a question about the owner of the property, and as Andrew mentioned, their permit has been in suspension for some time. Presumably, that's because they have not been responding to our request for information on their permit. So it seems, we could certainly try to reach out to them, but truthfully, I think, barring any evidence that this neighbor who is making this allegation is able to submit to us, I don't see us being able to verify that. One of the things that we would do moving forward is want to see that there's tight conditions that make us feel comfortable that they are using the correct water source, which in this case is a permitted diversion where they're supposed to forbear and have that water in the tanks during the summer. And so, that could look like conditions to go out and do a pre-cultivation season inspection to make sure that they've got enough water stored. There presumably could be conditions added to try to make, the county comfortable that that the water source that they get approved for would actually be the one that they're using.
Thank you.
So I recognize how much time staff has spent on this, and you have lots of other permits and things to do. So I'm just kind of wondering if it's appropriate. Can you tell us why you didn't recommend it for continuance and why you recommended it for denial?
Yeah, I'll just answer that. So after October 3rd, which was the hearing that it was first on for, we were reaching out to, and Andrew probably can speak to this better, but reaching out to the applicant to try to get a response, get his side of the story, and we really didn't get much of a response from him. So it was continued at that October 3rd hearing to today's date. We had to have a staff report. We had to make some sort of a recommendation. It had been almost a month, and we hadn't really received any substantial response from the applicant. That told us something.
So I'm really torn with this one. I hear testimony of wanting more time, but then also testimony or staff presenting that we've had 30 days and we haven't got any evidence. There's a really detailed incident report. So that's like, I read that and I read that a couple of times. I'm like, okay, wow. There's a lot of information in there that's very concerning. And so I go back to the finding of public health and safety. So
Excuse me, can I have a word, please?
now would not be the time, sir. So I'm just really torn. If staff was given till the December, I think it's 4th meeting with a hard set, would staff feel that would provide appropriate time? Also, I think there needs to be another site visit, it sounds like.
I think that could work, yes.
And then this is gonna be going way out on a limb. Could staff do a site visit tomorrow?
The only thing I could commit to is we can try really hard to do that. It may be possible. We have a number of inspectors that are actually going out and doing inspections pretty frequently. We may be able to get this site on that route. I know. So, yeah, we can try really hard, and if not tomorrow, next week.
Well,
would definitely have
the reason I was saying that, I know we have to give 24-hour notice, because where I was going with that is seeing if the applicant would waive that.
Well, right. That would
For a
be the
continuance.
request. Yep.
Yeah.
We can have somebody out there tomorrow if the applicant's willing to allow us to be there.
Okay. So would the applicant please come to the podium? If we were willing to grant a continuance to the December 4th hearing, would you be willing to meet county staff, waive your 24-hour notice, and meet county staff for an inspection tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. You may sit down.
And I have, like I said, I have all the doctor's visits that I was in the last 6 weeks, and
I
can
100% believe
print them
that
off.
you had medical, so I believe that. Thank you. So, let me finish, please. What I heard was staff could get somewhere December 4th, and I've heard the applicant's willing to meet for a site visit tomorrow, and staff could accommodate that. Commissioner McFarland.
I'm just wondering if the permit was to be denied tonight, just to shape the discussion, what would the applicant's recourse be like? Would they just start the process over, or what could they do?
They would be able to file an appeal to the Board of Supervisors. So they would still have an opportunity to attempt to have their permit approved.
Commissioner West?
I have some serious concerns. These are serious concerns about this project, but I'd like to always err on the benefit of the doubt, and an applicant is asking for more time, and I lean towards giving the applicant more time and follow along with the inspection tomorrow.
Yeah, I have to say, I feel more comfortable with this continuance, given the suggestion that you made and the agreement by the applicant to allow an inspection tomorrow, not next week or in 2 weeks. So with that, I could go along with the continuance.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it gives, I mean, we're giving if granted, we've given a little bit of time, but also providing staff the opportunity to go see if some of the concerns are addressed, and then also gives the applicant the ability to converse with staff to try to mitigate those concerns. And then December, we know one way or the other. I'm going to ask for someone to make a motion, but please include the applicant's waiver of the 24-hour notice for the inspection tomorrow in your note, in your.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we continue this
To
under the, did
to
you
it-
want to make the motion for me?
Nope, I'm just going to help you if you need.
Go ahead. That the motion is to continue this until, is it December 4th?
Fifth.
4th,
It'll actually be December 5th.
5th, and that contingent upon the applicant waiving the 24-hour notice, and that there'll be an inspection tomorrow, and staff will have an opportunity to come up with additional mitigations if necessary, recommendations. Does that make sense? Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. We got a first and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner
Chair?
Scabdall? Yes.
Yeah, just, I also have a lot of concerns about this project. The lack of a fire management plan on a commercial project, out in a highly prone fire area is concerning. When we do the inspection, I think it'd be important to note if there was any fire, prevention equipment on site, any fire extinguishers. Also, I have a lot of concerns about how the electrical system obviously was put together out there. I know when we approve projects, they're conditioned ultimately on getting building permits, and I would hope that this would include electrical building inspection if this project goes forward, and then certainly concerned about what was going on with the water supply situation. I can support the continuance, but when this comes back for our review, if staff is recommending approval in the future, we're going to need a lot of evidence and documentation that this situation can be managed going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion? Can we please get a roll call vote?
Commissioner McFarland?
No.
Commissioner Curriasi?
Yes.
Commissioner West?
Yes.
Commissioner Scavdall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder?
Yes.
Commissioner Levy?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. So I'm going to ask the commission, are we good to power through to the next project without a break? Everyone good? Okay, so now we have Renewable Energy America and staff and the applicant. They might want to talk about when their inspection time is tomorrow.
Oh, yeah?
Computer's working now? Okay. So just to clarify, we are at Renewable America LLC conditional use permit modification, and staff will present a staff report.
Good evening, my name is Rodney. Presenting the Renewable America LLC conditional use permit modification. And I'm really having issues with this screen because it's got a bar right in the middle of it. And I need to get rid of it. Okay. Okay, sorry about all that. The project is located here in the Arcata Bottoms. This is an approved project. It's a modification to an approved project, and I'm going to give a summary of the approval and then a summary of what's changing. The approval is a conditional use permit for a community-scale solar energy and storage project. The original project was approved by the Planning Commission in January of 2023. The approved footprint covers approximately 30 acres and includes a battery storage system on a 5,000 square foot cement pad. The approval also included the development of solar panels that are 14 feet in height within pollinator habitat. The modified project has a modified footprint that covers approximately 27.4 acres, about 2.5 acres smaller. The layout of the panels will now shift from the west of what was approved and extend north to within 50 feet of the northern parcel boundary. The battery storage system will now be located on 2 equipment pads, one being 2,500 square feet, the other at 2,156 square feet. The modification includes the development of solar panels that are now 9.75 feet in height, still within pollinator habitat. What you see here is the approved site plan, and you see the configuration of the solar panels as such. And this is the modified site plan, shifting what was in this location up into this location here. Now, there were some public questions and comments, and all of them were centered around what goes along this fence line here, which is a PG&E gas easement. So I'm going to jump into those. These questions probably don't have as many words as the original questions, but I had to kind of condense them to kind of get through this quicker. So one question is, what is the impact of ground-borne vibration on the gas pipeline? And staff does not anticipate an impact. In addition, PG&E was made aware of the project and its components, and no concerns were expressed, so no further investigation was deemed necessary. Second question is, how will the project affect future facilities maintenance within the easement? The answer is it won't. There will be no project components within this easement. A third question was, is there enough room outside the PG&E easement to plant visual buffer? The answer is there would be a minimum, and I have that underlined because we'll look at this later, of 13 feet separating the panels from the easement. Here's a couple comments that were made. One is the modification will move the project from further away to immediately adjacent to the PG&E gas pipeline. That's not true, as the solar panel minimum setback from the property line and the easement will remain the same as originally approved. The second question or comment was that PG&E did not sign off on the project, and that was concerning for the commenter. As I already stated, the project was referred to PG&E and no response was received and no concerns from PG&E. We have no information of that. So this here, I just want to jump into a little detail here, but if you see where my pointer is, that represents 36 feet, which is the required in the MH zone. And I know it's hard to see, but I did this with a ruler. The panels are outside of that 36-foot setback, and they're like that all the way down on the original approved site plan. The same setback is here, and the same situation occurs on this new site plan, 36 feet from the parcel boundary all the way throughout. I was curious to know more about this easement and what it really looked like. This is the actual easement from 1962. At the bottom is the legal description. I asked our county surveyor to plot this easement on a map. And here you see it here. It starts at Foster and goes all the way up, or I shouldn't use my finger, all the way up to 27th Avenue. Here on the bottom, you can see how he drew out the easement. It is a 20-foot wide easement, approximately 3 foot away from the parcel line. So I went out there today because I know that they're developing Phase A, and I wanted to get an idea of what's really happening out there. So you see this internal fence line right here, that's going to be around the solar panels. And you see the bushes over here on the right, there's a fence behind those. And this is the PG&E easement with their access road there. What you see here is me measuring from the internal fence to the external fence in both these slides. So coming from internal to external here, and you see the bushes on the right here. This is where I had set down the measuring tool, right where I got to the bushes that I couldn't enter into. The foreman on site gave me some assistance, and what you're seeing here is he put his tape measure into the bushes and hooked it onto the fence and brought it back. And I don't know if you can see this, but that says 20 feet and that says 9 feet. That's 29 feet. As I showed earlier, the easement was 20 feet, 3 feet off the parcel boundary, so it's well within this area that has no infrastructure in it and none planned. I actually did go into the fence line because they had stakes in there where they're going to put the solar panels. And I don't have a photo of that, but the stakes, the distance from the first stake to the internal fence was approximately 20 feet, which is approximately 49 feet from the parcel boundary. So I was able to find that not only does this project meet the prescribed setbacks, the required setbacks, but it meets them and exceeds them. Staff's recommending approval of this project and that the commission make findings to approve the conditional use permit modification and adopt the resolution approving the conditional use modification subject to the recommended conditions of approval. And that concludes my presentation. I can answer questions, and the agent for the project is available on Zoom or the phone to answer questions as well.
Are there any clarifying questions from commission to staff? Go ahead.
It's not a question, it's just a quick thank you for going out there and including on-site data. It's really helpful to have you measure it.
Yes, thank you for that. Just clarification from what the fence lines, they looked like 29 feet. So technically that internal fence line was built 6 feet on the applicant's side, property side. So that fence could actually technically be 6 feet closer to that easement.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you for those really help too, by the way. So now we would offer the applicant up to 10 minutes to present if they so choose, and that's via Zoom. Brad Johnson's putting his hand up.
Yes, hi, this is Brad Johnson. I'm the agent for the applicant here, land use attorney, and let's see if I can get my video turned on. Actually, I don't see that option, so you'll just have to listen to me. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk through some of the concerns that were expressed regarding the modification. In terms of the reason for the modification, the landowner, we do not own the land. Renewable America does not own the land. It's subject to a lease, but the landowner, which is the owner of the flower farm there, would like to lease out some additional area where the prior phase B of the project was located for strawberry cultivation. So it was a discussion with Renewable America about whether or not we'd be willing to reconfigure the project, and it was at such a point where it was possible to reconfigure. So that's an accommodation we're making for the landowner, so that there can be some more strawberry cultivation out there. But in any event, we looked at the commenters' concerns. I appreciate Rodney's presentation. I did want to talk about one aspect of the commenters' concerns, which relates to this idea of ground-borne vibration resulting from the installation of the metal poles into the ground. The solar panels are mounted on steel poles that are placed directly into the ground. There's no concrete foundation. There's no grading that's required. So these are steel poles that are placed directly into the soil. And the commenter expressed some concern that the placement of these steel poles could result in some vibrations that might have the ability to cause some structural damage to the PG&E gas pipeline. There's no, to summarize our response in our letter that we provided to Rodney late this afternoon, there's no published study or information regarding the potential for the type of steel poles that are used for solar projects like this to result in vibrations that could impact nearby gas pipelines. So there's nothing that's directly on point that we can look at to provide some guidance on this, but there are a number of published studies that relate to the installation of steel piles for much larger projects like bridges and freeway overpasses and so forth. And so we cite to 3 of these studies, all of which look at the potential for vibrations from the installation of these steel piles for vehicular bridges and whatnot on nearby gas pipelines. So the summarized findings are this: using the most conservative study, meaning the study that found these vibrations to extend the farthest beyond the point where the steel pile is being installed, the maximum distance that the study found where detectable ground vibrations extended beyond the point where a steel pile is being installed was something like 25 feet. And that was one of 5 different sites that were studied in that particular study. The other 4 sites, the ground vibrations extended between 20 and 15 feet, so a lesser distance. There are 2 other studies that we cite in our response letter that found much shorter distances for the reach of these ground vibrations. One is approximately 4 feet, and the other is approximately 6.3 feet. And again, all 3 of these studies relate to the installation of steel piles into the ground and the potential for that activity to cause vibrations that might damage a nearby gas pipeline. So not directly analogous, but close enough to be useful here. By comparison, the steel poles that will be installed for this project are much, much smaller than would be used for a freeway bridge project. That probably doesn't need to be stated, but I just wanted to make that clear. So what we're looking at is, in this case, the steel piles or the steel poles that will be installed for this project will be a minimum of 25 feet away from the gas pipeline, which is, even using the most conservative figure, outside the distance that was found to be the reach of vibrations for much larger steel piles. So based on the available published information on this type of activity and the potential risk to nearby gas pipelines, the project just does not have the potential to result in any kind of structural damage to the pipeline. So we wanted to make that clear and provide that information for the commenter so that the commenter can have some comfort around that issue. Otherwise, we did not see any risk or any way that the project modification would impact PG&E's ability to use its easement. As Rodney's photo showed, the project is well outside the easement. There will be absolutely nothing associated with the project that's constructed within the easement, and PG&E will continue to have kind of free and unfettered access for maintaining the gas pipeline and doing whatever else it needs to do. Other than that, we appreciate the time and hope you approve the modification.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from Renewable America that wants to comment? I think we got about 4 minutes left. Seeing no hands go up, you will have 5 minutes for any rebuttal from public comment. So their presentation was the beginning of public comment too, by the way. So in person, is there anyone that wants to speak on this project? Please come to the podium. You got 3 minutes.
Good evening. I sent you a picture. It's a PG&E infrastructure that they placed in that vegetation line right next to the fence. My family's owned this property since I was in 7th grade, purchased for our horses. And then everything was pasture. There was no vegetation. And it's our understanding that the current property owner planted the vegetation to shield his operations. And it's fast growing. It's got eucalyptus trees. It's got all sorts of plants, and they're fast growing. When that vegetation was pushing over our fence line, we asked the bulb farm to address it, and they started removing the trees. Eucalyptus were big. One fell, took out our fence line, fell onto our pasture. And after that, PG&E found out about the vegetation removal, and they asked them to cease and have their crews remove it. So they got excited when somebody else was addressing the vegetation there. The roots were left, and my concern is the integrity of the pipeline if you've got these roots going down, and we are in the bottoms, which is a liquefaction area. So you have the opportunity for this pipeline that's been there since the 60s to have been weakened, because when the PG&E got their easement, I'm sure there was no thought that there was going to be vegetation. That now, we've moved a project down when there's no residences adjacent to it to next to our property, which has residents fairly close, and then a developed whole parcel with several residences next door. So the worry and the danger if the worst happens and something goes wrong now that you've added a spark or static electricity because you're creating energy and putting it to the grid is just concerning for the neighborhood. We want PG&E to weigh in. Them not weighing in doesn't mean they have any concerns. It just means they haven't weighed in. It's next to impossible. I was bugging them about this tree line, and you need to take care of it so we don't have a problem, until my mom had her final illness and I got busy with life. So if this project could be continued, I talked to a person earlier who now works for PG&E and was going to try and get a hold of them. We would just like that very much, the neighborhood. It's a lovely neighborhood. The consequences are too great. I mean, it's a what if, but it's a big what if. Spark, gas, explosion, then there's nothing the neighborhood can do but try and clean up and hope for the best that nobody got hurt. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room that wants to speak on this? Seeing no one, go to Zoom. Is there anyone that wants to speak on Zoom? I'll hold off on calling on Brad. I'm just giving a little bit more time, not seeing anyone else. So I'm going to go back to the applicant now that has 5 minutes to rebut any public comment.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Well, a couple of those were new concerns that we hadn't seen in the previous comment letter, but I think we can speak to them. I do want to make clear that PG&E is very aware of this project because the project interties with PG&E's facilities. So this is not something that is under PG&E's radar. It is fully in front of them. They fully understand that this is a solar project that's being developed there. It just is, there's just no risk. That's why they haven't commented. If we go, Rodney, I don't know if it's possible to pull your photo back up of the easement, but you can see from that photograph that the project is well outside of the easement, and the project does not pose a risk of sparks or other, other kind of fire-causing activities that could somehow interact with the buried gas pipeline. That's just not within the realm of possibility. So again, this interties, our project interties with PG&E's grid connection. PG&E is very well aware that we are developing the project, and that's just, there just aren't any risks. So with that, I'm available for any questions, but thank you.
Thank you. Does the commission have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah.
Commissioner.
Just curious, Brad, are you a licensed engineer, or what is your background, just that the audience knows, that qualifies you to say there's no Risk of sparking and no risk to the gas line.
Yeah, so I am an attorney, but if you want to hear from the project engineer, I'm happy to, he is available and is happy to chime in if you'd like.
No, I think if his conclusions are the same, I just want to make sure that you have, qualified staff making that assessment that there's no risk.
Yes.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? So I will close public comment and offer the opportunity for staff if there's anything they heard that they want to clarify or.
I just want to clarify that I don't have internet on my computer anymore, and I can't bring that image back up.
Okay,
Right.
I thought I heard you say that, but for the record, I remember you showing there is two tape measures. One had 20 foot and one had 9 feet.
Yes.
So 20 and 9 equals 29.
I was very thorough out there. I wanted to make sure that I came here and everyone understood what was on the ground out there, and I'm
Okay.
confident that the findings are correct.
Okay. Commissioner Curriasi?
Through the chair to staff, just a quick clarifying question or confirming, you did reach out to PG&E regarding this, and did they respond with no concern? Did they not respond?
There was no response. And we also, and I don't know if this counts, but the project was referred to the Redwood Coast Energy Authority, and they recommended approval.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner O'Neill?
I'm trying to understand, but it seems like there's two issues here. One is PG&E's lack of maintenance concern of the neighborhood, and I think, you could certainly put them on notice of that, and if anything did occur, you would be on the record of having told them. They do have a vegetation crew. I think I know who's in charge of it, but I think that that's a separate issue. And there could be concerns from roots growing or whatever, but that doesn't have anything to do with this project that I can see. So I think there's two concerns. One, you need to put PG&E on notice they need to do their job. And there have been accidents in other areas because of their negligence, where they've had explosions from, pipelines. So, there are real concerns that I think that you should, in writing, inform them of. They're moving this, I'm still a little confused about, there weren't any changes from when it was approved before on the right-of-way and the pipeline. I mean, it's not changing that, is it?
No, the setbacks are the same
Yeah.
from what was approved in January of last year.
And this allows them to do some farming because they're going to do
Yeah.
the strawberries. So I understand the community's concern, but I think that it should be a concern that should be taken up with PG&E.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner West?
I just want to acknowledge I hear and understand the public commenters' concerns, and I agree with Commissioner O'Neill that it is something that it sounds like the concern is there to follow up with PG&E. I am hesitant to hold up the approval of this project, to wait on PG&E to respond in this case, because it is in many ways a separate issue, and we don't have evidence that anything is wrong with the gas line. And this is an agency that is not always responsive, and they've been given the opportunity and they haven't. And so I think I lean towards moving forward with the information that we have in front of us today.
Yeah, I agree. I do respect the concerns and sympathize with the concerns of the commenter. I appreciate her bringing this issue up when it might not have been on anyone's radar. But from what I understand of the investigation that's been done, and I did find the understandably, the letter from the applicant's attorney, which was submitted just today, I think it tries to go through clearly what, I think it's quite responsive to the comments and the concerns that were raised. And the only thing I'm wondering is there anything that staff is aware of that could because I'm not comfortable holding up the approval of the project, but is there anything additional that could be said in the project conditions that could ensure that there is no interference whatsoever with PG&E's maintenance of this easement? I mean, that may be unnecessarily superfluous, but
I wouldn't say that, I mean, you could write conditions to verify what's already proposed by the applicant, but as you mentioned, that may be superfluous.
Yeah.
If, for whatever reason, the applicant were to forget that they need to stay out of somebody else's easement, I mean, certainly there's repercussions for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they've designed it to be away from the easement.
Yeah.
An agency like the fire department or something like that that could support that they could go to for backup, to send something to PG&E to tell them they need to clean their easement up?
That's technically outside the
Right.
scope of
It
this
is,
project.
but I mean, that might be a good recommendation.
Well, would the planning
informal.
commission like to send a letter to PG&E?
You could.
So I would offer that you could give us a direction after the meeting to write a letter on your behalf to PG&E and express concern about the maintenance of that gas line.
I think that puts them on notice that there's an agency that's told them they need to do something, and if they neglect to do it and there is an incident, then it's on record. And you could also contact your local fire department or any agency that would be able to support you. And, you know, because we all know that PG&E has been responsible for some incidents throughout the state that have not been good. So, you know, it doesn't, just because they don't respond doesn't mean she doesn't have valid concerns or the other neighbors don't have concerns. But I don't see that it's related to this project. It's just sort of incidental that we know about it.
Mr. Curriozzi?
Yeah, I think with that, I'd like to make a motion, if that works for the commission, to accept the Renewable America application as presented by staff and adopt the resolution as it stands.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion or comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Scabdall,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Curriozzi,
Yes.
Commissioner McFarland.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion carries. So we successfully made it through consent by 8:36 p.m. Good job, everyone. We only had 4 items. Sorry, try to make light of it. Is everyone good to keep moving forward, or would anyone like a break? Everyone's good to keep moving forward, okay?
Good.
So we will move to public hearings, and number 1, Shower Pass LLC, conditional use permit and special permit in the Neeland area.
So, Chair, if I could ask your indulgence, the next 3 items are actually all interrelated. So what we would like to do is a way of giving a more comprehensive presentation, and also to save a little bit of time, is to give a presentation on all 3.
Okay.
And then obviously they need individual motions and actions, but each of these individually, if they weren't related, would have been on consent.
Okay. So clarifying though, we're going to open up all 3 hearings.
Open all 3 public hearings, yes.
So I will open all both Shower Pass LLC and Marcus Land Company Inc. conditional use permit at the same time and turn it over to staff.
Good evening. I'm Portia Salcedo. I'm going to be presenting on the first 3 hearing items tonight, including 2 Shower Pass Farms LLC projects. Both are conditional use permits and special permits. And the 3rd project is Marcus Land Co. for a conditional use permit. The star is the location within the county where these projects are located on the map there. Here are the three main project parcels in relation to the Mad River and Showers Creek. There are currently 2 wet ford crossings to access the project parcels. The yellow star shows the location of the preferred wet ford crossing, and the red star indicates where the second wet ford crossing is located. The yellow one is called Showers Pass, and the red one is called Showers Creek. Just, they have different names. All 3 of these projects have the same major concern, which is the wet ford crossing of a fish-bearing stream. Showers Creek is a Class 1 stream, and to access these project parcels, they have to cross it from Stapp Road. The continued use of either of these stream crossings is an ongoing threat to water quality fish and amphibians. There are 2 routes off Stapp Road. They both require the stream crossing, and there are several private properties that utilize this access that require the crossing of the stream, including 3 previously approved cannabis cultivation entitlements. Proposals have previously been submitted to install a permanent bridge crossing over one of the stream crossings on one of these access easements. And discussions amongst property owners, cannabis applicants, and permit holders have occurred about installing a bridge on the preferred crossing. Grant funding is being sought for the bridge work. Recommended conditions of approval include the requirement to form a road maintenance association, it's condition 7, and a requirement to improve at least one of the crossings with a permanent bridge within 2 years of the effective date of the project approval. The 3 cannabis cultivation farms already permitted that utilize these crossings do not have the requirement imposed on their permits to install the bridge. However, all permits and unpermitted cannabis operations are required to join this road maintenance association. If the crossing is not in place within 2 years, all of these permits will be considered for revocation. County staff has already been in communication with all of these farms regarding this issue, and this notification will therefore not come as a surprise. So now I'll go through each of the projects. So hearing item 1 is for the Showers Pass Farm LLC. Application number 10854. This is a conditional use permit and a special permit for 12,200 square feet of existing outdoor cannabis cultivation. The water source is a permitted well. The annual water use is 93,000 gallons. There's an on-site nursery and there's an off-site processing. Conditions of approval include the applicant must add an additional 30,000 gallons, and the applicant shall restock 0.56 acres of post-2016 timber conversion. The hearing item number 2 is for it's called Showers Pass Farm LLC. Application number 11989 for 18,634 square feet of existing outdoor cultivation. There's 160 gallons of irrigation, for 160 gallons of irrigation water source from a well on an adjacent property, APN 317182019. No on-site processing or nursery is proposed. Conditions of approval include that the applicant must add an additional 60,000 gallons of water storage and record deeded access to a well on the parcel previously mentioned that's not theirs, and 100% solar energy is required as it's being powered by generators currently by January 1st, 2026. Hearing item number 3 is for Macris Land Co. LLC. This is a conditional use permit for 19,595 square feet of outdoor and 1,142 square feet of ancillary nursery area. The irrigation water is sourced from two groundwater wells, and a point of diversion on site is for domestic purposes only. Annual irrigation need was 577,500 gallons, and then the existing water storage was 50,000 gallons in hard tanks. Processing includes drying and trimming and occurs in an existing building on site. Power is provided by a generator and is also, this project is conditioned to transition to 100% renewables by January 1st, 2026. On November 4th of this year, the applicant requested to reduce the proposed annual water usage from the 577,500 gallons to 180,000 gallons. The applicant stated that the larger quantity was needed and was outdated. And he said that they shortened their cultivation season, and they've been using or propagating smaller plants that require less water and have a shorter lifespan. CDFW, or California Department of Fish and Wildlife, has agreed to support the water storage reduction to 100,000 gallons, provided that the wells and the point of diversion are properly metered prior to the 2025 cultivation season, which is also condition number 9. So we've revised the condition of approval A10, resolution finding 1, finding 6, a resolution finding 6B, as shown here, which is kind of small, but we just, did a strike through and corrected the water, and then also, changed the 100,000 gallons per CDFW's consent. So that concludes that presentation on all 3 of these things. So if you have any questions, I'm here for Macris, and then Andrew is also the planner for the other 2.
Are there any questions, Commissioner O'Neill?
I'm curious about this bridge. It would be a privately owned bridge, right?
Correct,
And
yep.
what kind of standards do they have to, who permits a bridge? Is that Public Works? And, what is the bridge in terms of what's required to be done in 2 years?
So the bridge would require a permit from the county as well as CDFW and the Water Board. And so, there's different ways that the bridge might get constructed. There's different types of bridges that can be placed out there. Right now, I don't believe that there is a design that has been proposed. There was a bridge that was proposed, as Portia had mentioned previously a few years ago, that actually had been designed and submitted for permits, but it was unable to go through the permit process for various reasons. And that was for the northern crossing, which is also referred to as a lower crossing. The upper crossing, which was the yellow star, is a little bit less of a less wide of a crossing, and it's a steeper approach on both sides, so it may in fact be an easier bridge to put in place, and so that's why that's actually being referred to as potentially
So
the
when you say
preferred.
2 years, is that to get permitted or 2 years to construct? And in the meantime, are they able to just do damage to the creek?
So, it's a great question. All of these farms have been in place before 2016. There's also a number of private landowners out there who don't have cannabis operations, and so that has been occurring for 10 years or more. So the idea here is, let's try to improve the situation. It's going to take some time to get a bridge out there. We've been working with our partner agency, CDFW, to see, okay, what is an appropriate time in their view to correct the situation and get a bridge. And they believe 2 years maximum is what they would want to see.
To get it permitted or to build it? Because
To
I
have it in
think 2
place.
years is quick.
We thought so too, and so we've had some discussions with CDFW. County was actually suggesting 5 years to get the bridge in place. The local CDFW staff has held pretty firm to their position that the bridge should be in place in 2 years. And so that is something, and I believe the applicants here may want to speak to that, but that's something where the planning commission could choose to amend that condition. As it is right now, that's reflecting the recommendation from CDFW for 2 years.
And then there's times of the year when you build bridges and times you don't. So depending, we shouldn't just say 2 years. You should pick some construction season in there too. I could see if it was permitted in 2 years.
Mr. Levy?
Thank you. I do just have a question about, as a practical matter or a legal matter. I mean, I think the solution that's being proposed here is fair and reasonable, to require the bridge to be installed and all parties involved, or at least all cannabis permittees, should contribute to the cost of doing so. I am wanting to understand, though, how that works for the permits that were already granted, if that's not a condition that was previously, attached to their projects.
Right, so it wasn't, unfortunately. But as Portia had mentioned, well, let me start over. So there is a requirement of the cannabis ordinance, the second ordinance that the county adopted, which is retroactive to all permits, which is that if there are 3 or more cannabis operations on an existing road, they must form or consent to form a road maintenance association and agree to fund whatever improvements may be required. So that's the tie-in here, is that if this gets approved as conditions for these farms, the other farms, through that requirement for a road maintenance association, are going to be held to that standard. And so if this does get approved, one of our next steps is going to be to send a letter to those other farms that are already approved, letting them know that they have this same requirement and they're going to be subject to it. As Portia had mentioned, we've already had those discussions, so all of them are aware that this is something that is taking place, but that would be our official notification to them that they're going to be required to do that as well.
Thanks. That additional detail was helpful. Thanks.
Mr. Curriozzi?
Through the chair, can you remind me if the lower pass, the Strongs Creek Pass, is decommissioning of that part of this, and then also the road accessing that pass?
It would not be decommissioned. So there's the interesting thing out here is there's a number of different parcels, including a lot of land holdings from Sierra Pacific and potentially some other logging companies. And so the lower pass is actually used by Sierra Pacific to do their logging and other things. We actually met with Sierra Pacific. They were not interested in contributing to any of these efforts. They use a temporary bridge when they actually do their logging operations. However, they did express their willingness to allow for a bridge to be constructed on their property, although there is easements as well that would potentially give these landowners the ability to do that. So it's not proposing to decommission it because there are other landowners who use that for other activities.
But to piggyback on that, if I heard the staff report correctly, is once the bridge is in place, those passes can't be used for cannabis activities. Was that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So decommissioning for cannabis activity use. Any other commissioners? Okay, so we have 3 hearings here that are open. Now public comment's open. We'd go to the applicant. Shower Pass LLC, you have up to 10 minutes. Well, technically, would they get up to 20 minutes because they're presenting on 2 projects?
That's your discretion.
Good evening, Commission. Just for the record, I don't know that we're going to have many comments will be available to answer questions. We're actually coming up to address the 2-year time frame for the bridges to be built. And maybe I should explain my role in this, or our role in this. These 2 gentlemen with the 2 projects that are being up for review tonight came into our office last week. They were told, I believe, by CDFW and by one of the environmental companies that had done some of the work that they should come and talk to us. Margot Advisors has had a very extremely successful run at securing grant funding over the last 3 years. And that's why they were sent to us. We are currently working on the final review through a nonprofit for the County of Humboldt to get, in the first round of approval, $15 million of road improvements and culvert replacements exclusively for cannabis farmers. This should be signed by the end of the year. It is phase 1 of 3 phases, each equaling up to $15 million. We have already talked to the nonprofit about these 2 bridges, and they absolutely want to include them in phase 2. If they are included, it will be paid for completely by CDFW, the folks who are insisting and putting these restrictions in place. And there shouldn't be any reason why this could not go through. It just would be impossible before 2 years. So the local Eureka office, I think for all of the folks who have worked with them, they are coming at it from an enforcement standpoint, always. They don't consider the farmers and the work that really needs to get done. In many ways, we find that they are somewhat preventing good work from getting done by not allowing the time for that work to get completed. So I don't want to go too much into that other than to say Sacramento, the folks down there, are very aware and supporting our local farmers up here. And so we encourage the commission to consider extending this beyond 2 years. I think it can be done in 3, but I think for a safeguard, 4 would be appropriate. And I think Commissioner O'Neill mentioned that just the cycle of design. First, we have the cycle of grant application, grant review, grant approval, reporting, or funding, and only then can we start the design. So.
And you also have to do environmental. I don't see.
Oh, all of it,
Hey,
all of it.
I don't see you
Let's
gonna
let them finish their presentation
Yeah.
before we.
And the good news in that, thank you. The good news in that is Cannabis for Conservation, which is our local nonprofit run by Jackie Riccio. She has chosen a crew of people. Engineering firm is North Point. We are the local compliance company. And they also have McGee, I can't remember his first name, an environmental company that is, and a environmental construction company. So she has compiled a list of partners that are named in Sacramento. We are on this grant. We are going to be, implementing this grant altogether. So it is really a great program, and we really hope that Showers Pass can include getting a little bit more time to make this happen. We all want it. These folks have basically said that they are willing to move forward, even if they don't get the grant. But of course, that is going to be at great sacrifice, because these bridges are going to be costing several $100,000, if not more.
Is that all of the presentation from?
Sure.
Okay. Do you have a question for the applicant? Okay, please.
Just a clarifying question, you were speaking about Eureka CDFW, and then you said the folks in Sacramento, so were you?
CDFW in Sacramento.
So
grant-
CDFW headquarters is supportive of this project, but not necessarily the Eureka office? You weren't talking about?
Yes, well.
You
to
mean
be
the grant
very
program,
clear, Yeah,
right?
to be very clear, CDFW in Sacramento has not reviewed these 2 bridges.
But they're supportive of the grant program itself?
Absolutely, and in the current grant that we expect to be signed by the end of the next month, that one includes, if I'm not mistaken, 3 new bridges in Humboldt County.
Okay, and then the issue with the 2 years isn't necessarily that a bridge can't be built in 2 years, it's that you need more time so that the applicant doesn't have to pay for the bridge.
No, I don't think the bridge can be built in 2 years under any circumstances.
It's on very high elevation and you cannot get there to like a June. Basically, you have like 4 or 5 months of the year you to work over
Yeah, I understand work windows. I also understand, prefab bridges and stuff. But I guess my clarifying question is, the reason you want the time extension is so that the grant will pay for the bridge. That's the crux of it, right?
No, the real reason that they're asking for 2-year extension is because they don't think it can be accomplished in 2 years. There could be a secret requirement. There's definitely going to have to be a road association formed. There's going to be a 401 construction certification from the water board that will be required. A LSA from Fish and Wildlife will be required. It goes on and on. That doesn't even start the project of design. So any engineering firm here locally, usually you are at least on an 8-week timeframe until they even open up and review a scope of work. It usually takes about 6 months to get design plans back from a local engineer. So, and again, this doesn't account for anything unexpected like a CEQA review. So ideally, it would be wonderful if CDFW could provide the funds for these 2 bridges. But that is not why we really are asking for the extension. We're hoping to get it, but as I mentioned, they're willing to work with their road association or by forming a road association and building it.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Do you have any other things to present?
No, sir.
Okay. So you will be allowed up to 5 minutes to rebut after any public comment.
Thank you.
At this time, because I opened up all the public hearings at one time, now I would grant the Marcos Land Company their opportunity to speak, present. Okay, so with that, we will go to public comment. Is there anyone that wants to speak in person on any of these 3 projects of public hearings that are open? Please come to the podium. Seeing no one in person coming to the podium, let's go to Zoom. We got one hand. And I will accommodate some more time if needed, being as there's 3 projects you technically can speak on at this time. 7108.
Okay, I just have a question pertaining to all 3 of them. Since they're using generators for processing, propagation in nurseries, has there been an on-site inspection to make sure that all the electrical and everything is fire safe? And so that's my question. And if there hasn't been an on-site inspection to check all that out, when would that happen? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom that wants to speak? Seeing no one raise their hands, bring it back to in the room. The applicants, if they want to rebut anything, I think they really just asked about inspections, so it's everyone's good. You can stay seated. If you want to say something else, you can run to the podium. Please.
Well,
One second, we got the applicant coming to the podium. Sorry about that, Cliff.
Good evening. We just want to say that we just installed solar, so the whole farm is 100% working on solar. We get it through the grants. We recently had an inspection, so that's the only comment we want to make.
You say it's already been installed?
It is installed, it is checked, inspected, it is working as of
Great.
the moment.
And just to be clear, you're the owner of the app, of the Macross?
I am the owner.
I see.
But my English is not very good, so I allowed him to speak for me.
Understood. I just really wanted to understand, does the solar that is installed benefit only this, only the Macross project, or does it also supply power to the Showers Pass?
No, it's only on the Macross.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So now public comment is closed, and I'll turn it over to staff. I apologize.
Oh, sure,
cutting you
no.
off there.
Thanks for catching that. I couldn't see behind me. Yeah, to clarify the question the public commenter had, we actually have done an inspection on all three of these sites. The inspector who did that is actually a couple seats behind me. So, and he did mention that, as the Macross people had mentioned, that they're mostly or perhaps entirely on solar. If you would like to, we could have them come up and talk about the inspection, but that inspection was done within the last month, I believe, and further, all of these projects are conditioned to transition into solar power by 2026.
Okay. Commissioner Curriasi?
Through the chair, I just have a quick question regarding the two Showers Pass. It just related to the CAL FIRE standard request for signing building signage and fuel modification. It didn't look like those requirements showed up in the conditions. They are on the Macross one, but not on the other two, as far as I could tell.
That may be an omission. We can add that condition to the project. I know they have a water tank and turnaround, but I'm not sure about the signage.
Though, just wanted to clarify, those requirements are technically in the ordinance as well, though, correct or incorrect?
The requirement for signage, I don't believe is actually in the ordinance. The water storage and for fire suppression is a requirement. So I think Commissioner Curriasi is referencing the comments that came from CAL FIRE that they want to see that the signage is there. And so if that is not conditioned on these Showers Pass projects, that's something that we could easily add as conditions.
So staff can easily put it in there as parity. Okay. So am I going to get a motion?
I just want to make sure if we have a motion that we extend the 2 years to at least 3, because by my calculations, they would have to start the bridge in like 17 months in order to be able to build it during a reasonable construction season. And in particular, if they're going to have a grant. And I think that's a good thing, because then you have a higher maybe quality of bridge. They're going to have to do CEQA and get all their permitting and designs and all that in place, and I just don't think 17 months. If not, they get pushed into the winter, and that's not good, so.
So are you?
3 years at minimum, and 4 is more reasonable. I mean, they could get it done sooner, but.
Are you maybe making a motion there? Can one motion for all three, or does it need to be 3 separate motions?
Sorry, they're basically all the same functions, so if you just indicate that it is for the two Showers Pass and the Macross within the motion as recommended in the staff report, with the modification to extend the bridge construction period to at least 3 years, and to add in the CAL FIRE request signage for the Showers Pass projects, I think that would be sufficient.
If I could just interrupt, the other thing would be to, if you agree, would be to also add the revisions that Portia had walked through relative to the Macross project on water storage and irrigation amount.
Yes.
Let's get going.
Commissioner West?
I would say the 3 years, and if there was a need to come back, then they could come to the planning department and you could extend that if there was reason to do so.
Up to 4?
Yeah, so you could say 3, and with the planning department being able to extend it if there's reasonable reasons to do that. So
might-
it doesn't have to come back to us or get automatically canceled. But somebody else make the motion, because I didn't catch what he said.
Commissioner West, you had your hand up or something, you were kind of,
Commissioner O'Neill addressed it.
okay. The only thing I would request is if you did go to that 4, that there would be some sort of target for the 3, like they have to have everything lined up, engineering ready for the permits, and then that last 12 months for construction or something like that.
Right, what I had
I
said
would-
was 3, and if they needed an extension, they would have to have reasonable cause, and the planning director could approve that without an automatic cancellation and coming back to us. So, does that make sense?
Yeah.
You could do that. I
That
mean,
makes sense to me.
They have common sense, they can use it.
Commissioner West?
I'm going to take a shot at a motion, but I'm a little bit sleepy, so help me out. Okay, I motion to approve items 1 through 3 with the amendments per Commissioner O'Neill's suggestion to extend the time of the bridge to 3 years with the potential option of a 4th year based on staff's review. And then there was a suggestion from Commissioner Curriasi, I believe. Can you state that for me for the record?
To include CAL FIRE's requests, standard requests for building signage, numbering, and fuel modification to Showers Pass.
To include Commissioner Curriasi's suggestion, and then to also include the suggestion from staff.
I'll second it.
So we got a first and a second. Any discussion? So we're going to do a roll call. This is going to be for all 3 projects at one time.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi,
Yes.
Commissioner Skavdal,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner McFarland.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Approved. So we're at this, we're supposed to end our meetings at 9:30 and we still got 3 other projects.
Well, we do, and so I know I'm going to upset some folks. But the Hills is not going to take 17 minutes. And the Laura Muzzy conditional use permit modification will probably also take a little bit more time. The item number 6 involves replacement of a septic system and is time sensitive. Probably shouldn't have been on the end of the agenda. So I would offer as a possible motion that you could at this point continue the Hills and the Laura Muzzy conditional use permit. We didn't schedule anything for November 21st, but I would say that the Hills by itself is enough to support a meeting. And that you continue those 2 to the 21st of November and then take on the Lynette Chin Coastal Development Permit.
Okay. So I don't have a problem with that. So we will go to,
We need a motion.
Should we make a motion to that effect
Yes,
right
please.
now?
so we have to technically go to each individual hearing and say,
Yeah.
we're going to open this, not open it.
Not
Right,
open.
right.
We're going to continue it
Right.
to that. So number 4, the Hills, I'm looking for a motion to continue it to a date certain of November 21st.
I will move that we continue the Hills and Shadow Light Ranch to November 21st.
Second.
Is there, so at this point in time, is there any public comment on the continuance? Seeing no one in the room, come to the podium. Seeing no hands on Zoom on the continuance, can we please get a roll call on that?
Commissioner Skavdal,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner McFarland,
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder. Yes. Motion carries.
So now we will go to item number 5, Laura Musi, conditional use permit modification. We're looking for a motion to continue that to a date certain of November 21st.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment on that continuance? Seeing no public comment, can I please get a roll call on that?
And that was Sarah and Noah?
Yep.
Commissioner Scavdall,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner McFarland,
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. So now we are to item number 6, Lynette Chin Coastal Development Permit in the Eureka area. Can we get a staff report, please?
Good evening, Chair Mulder and members of the Commission. My name is Derek Wiles, and I'll be presenting the Lynette Chen Coastal Development Permit. The project is located in the Eureka. The project is located in the Eureka area and takes access from a private driveway off of Mitchell Road. This coastal development permit, CDP, is for repair of a damaged leach field and also tree removal of approximately 60 trees for structure protection for the existing residents and structure protection for the pump house for Humboldt Community Services District. This project was requested for a public hearing from a neighbor. On the left, we have some of the trees marked for removal. These have been skinned and topped. As you can see, they are growing in clusters in both pictures. On the left-hand side, we have more trees marked, proposed for removal, skinned and topped as well, growing in clusters and competing for dominance. On the right-hand side, we have a tree that is growing from a dead stump. On the left-hand side, we have trees, approximately 23 trees that are marked for, proposed for removal, clumped together, some growing at an angle towards the house. And on the right-hand side, that picture is the same area, just a different angle. Some of the trees you can see right next to that, the white, I'm not sure what that part is, but they're clumped together. You have, I believe, 3 trees growing from one stump again, competing for dominance. Some of the comments received, this is from one neighbor. The area is teeming with numerous threatened, vulnerable, endangered species. Per the biological assessment indicates that there are no threatened, vulnerable, or endangered species. Without a doubt, CEQA applies to this project. There are 2 CEQA exemptions applicable to this project. Will lead to significant and avoidable environmental damage. The biological assessment indicates that there will not be significant and/or avoidable environmental damage. The project includes replacing a damaged leach field, which if not replaced will result in environmental damage. Habitat loss, biodiversity reduction, and soil erosion. The evidence outlined in the biological assessment provided indicates that this project will not create a loss of habitat or biodiversity. The intent is not to remove canopy, but to remove trees that are competing, thus increasing forest health. And per the biological assessment, additionally, these marked trees contained no structure that could serve as prime habitat to any listed species, as they lack crown complexity due to their age. Climate change, as shown in the photos, these trees are already outcompeting each other. The proposed project will increase forest health. Forest fire risk. The biological assessment indicates that the removal of these trees may serve as additional structure or woodland defense in the event of a fire. And increased flooding. This is not located in a flood zone. The Planning Department is recommending that the Commission find the project exempt from CEQA pursuant to Section 15302C and 15304 of the CEQA guidelines. Find the proposed project complies with Humboldt Bay Area Plan and zoning ordinance, and adopt the resolution approving the Lynette Chen Coastal Development Permit subject to the conditions of approval. Thank you, and I am available for any questions.
Are there any questions from the Commission for staff?
I was just wondering if you could reconcile finding 2 and finding 5, because in finding 2, you state that this is an exemption based on minor vegetation removal, but then in finding 5, you call it major vegetation removal. So I'm just kind of wondering how you came to the conclusion that 60 trees was minor.
I mean, I think so there is a definition in the zoning ordinance of major vegetation removal, which this would qualify for. So it could have, I'm sure, been worded, or we could word it better in the resolution, but really, we're looking at 2 separate issues here, or 2 separate considerations, which is that it is technically major vegetation removal under the zoning ordinance. That's not something that's unusual. Major vegetation removal is anything over 6,000 square feet of canopy, or anything that involves heavy equipment, or any trees that are over 12 inches in diameter at breast height. And so for CEQA purposes, however, we do consider that that is a minor amount of vegetation removal that would qualify for that CEQA exemption.
Okay, I get the zoning ordinance definition. I'm just kind of wondering what the threshold you use for that CEQA exemption is.
It's so this is surrounding a single-family residence, and so our belief is that that exemption is appropriate for vegetation removal that's consistent with the residential use of the property and to protect the residents. If it is certainly within the Planning Commission's purview to decide that it's not exempt, and you could direct staff to prepare a CEQA document, either an initial study that could lead to a mitigated negative declaration or an EIR. We didn't believe that that was necessary here, and that the facts, including the biological assessment and the report from the forester, indicate that there are no significant impacts or unusual circumstances that would render the use of that exemption not applicable.
So then lack of the CEQA document is what precludes, or what leads to the absence of mitigation for redwood take? Like, if you had to go through the CEQA process, that's when it would be considered, but because it's an exemption.
So,
Could I jump in a little bit here? I think we may be focusing on the wrong thing, because normally it is acceptable, encouraged under the Forest Practices Act to thin forests for habitat improvement, for forest health, and that's really what's happening here. We're not completely taking away vegetation. We're removing certain trees selectively in order to improve forest health. Normally, when you talk about vegetation removal, you're talking about removal of all the vegetation. That's not what's being discussed here. So major vegetation removal that you saw in finding number 5 is a term of art that comes out of the Coastal Act. And so that's a different definition than what we're talking about under CEQA. And this is being done with a THP or an exemption for thinning?
I believe it is a fire hazard exemption.
Yeah. So under the Forest Practices Act, you're allowed to thin a certain number of trees within the context of an exemption that allows you to remove the trees without going through a CEQA process, because that is beneficial to the forest health. Sorry.
And if I just may ask a clarifying follow-up, the nexus between the tree removal and the leach field is not that the leach field is under the forested area where the thinning is going to occur. It's that the logging or removing those trees will involve them falling onto, or I guess, could you explain the nexus with the leach field?
Yeah, I could do that. So there really is 2 things happening here. One is the leach field is in need of repair.
Yes.
It's failing, right? Separately, the landowners are seeking to remove some of the trees that are, as Derek had mentioned, out competing each other and are starting to become concerns relative to the structure. Both of those activities require a coastal development permit. They do not want to, and to further explain, the repair of a failing septic system could happen under an emergency coastal development permit. In fact, they did apply for one. However, we did not want to, and we didn't feel that the removal of the trees is an emergency situation. It wouldn't qualify for an emergency coastal permit. And so they didn't want to replace the septic system, then go through the effort of removing the trees and have some of those potentially damage their new septic system.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Curriasi?
So some of the trees being removed are specifically being removed so they will not interfere with the new septic system. Some of the trees are being removed so that they will not threaten the existing structures. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Any other clarifying questions? Okay, so now
Off of what Director Ford just said, can you confirm it? I could not find that in any of the staff report or materials, but there is a THP associated with this project?
Not a THP, but I believe, I believe there is a 150-foot fire hazard exemption. Give me 1 second here. Also, the applicant, I believe, is here as well and could probably answer that perhaps more quickly than I could.
Let me clarify. I probably misspoke on that, that the exemptions are considered the equivalent of a THP. If you comply with the exemption, the Forest Practices Act and the application of that treats it as if it's a THP.
I almost brought my new 2024 rule book with me just for this project, but I was like, no, I'm not going to.
That makes sense. But so to clarify the 150-foot setback, can you explain that piece one more time?
Sure. And so I probably need to correct myself. I'm not sure that there is a 150-foot fire hazard THP exemption that has been submitted to us yet, although that is something that they would need to obtain from CAL FIRE. So what that is within 150 feet and often up to 300 feet, you can do removal of fuel, including some tree removal and thinning of branches and things like that, for fire protection purposes without the need to go through a timber harvest plan. There's different, you see the signs kind of that they have up there. Within 30 feet, you want to remove all trees. Within 150 feet, there's some other requirements. You don't clear cut, you just maintain the forest, and then once you get up to 300 feet, you're not, removing as many of those fuels. Those are exemptions from the requirement to get a timber harvest plan.
That makes sense. And that exemption, that exemption is not sufficient to do some of this tree removal. That exemption also requires this CDP. Is that correct?
You're picking up on something really important here, which is that if this wasn't in the coastal zone, they would not need any permits from the county. So they would need to get this approval from CAL FIRE. So because they're in the coastal zone, they still need to do what is required from CAL FIRE, but they also need to get a coastal development permit. So there's going to be two separate things here.
So we got all the clear. So now the applicant, opening public comment, and it's the applicant want to speak. You have up to 10 minutes.
I don't know if I need to speak. It seems like you've mostly covered the details. I did want to say that we do already have our CAL FIRE permit. And so this is the permit we're waiting on to do the work. And, you know, we're balanced between the weather on the one hand and the nesting season on the other, and the market for timber on the other, which, anyway, it's a difficult balancing act. Let me see. I lost, of course, my page. Oh, there we go. So sort of the background is when we purchased the house in spring, this spring, the 47-year-old septic system had already failed. The nearest trees to the house in leach field were growing vigorously. They tilted toward the house. The branches were weighted toward the house because, of course, that's where the sunlight, they can reach the sunlight. Many branches reached across the midline of the roof, and the only clear place to fell them was across the leach fields, both the current leach field and the reserve leach field. So that means the trees need to be removed before the septic repair is done. Otherwise, you have to repair the septic more than once. So we decided to survey the property to decide which trees should be cut, which trees should be topped, which trees should be limbed up, so we could have all of the logging done, hopefully for our lifetimes, except possibly having to renew the topping at the same time. So that involves taking trees from the eastern edge of the house and a little bit to the south as well. And then we topped some trees to the south of the house, and then there's some around the western edge of the lawn because those trees, as those trees get taller and taller, the lawn gets smaller and smaller, and the buildings underneath the pump station for the county or the water management district gets more and more threatened. So we wanted to push back that edge because as the trees get taller, the branches get longer. That keeps the lawn area about the same size that it is now. So those were our purposes in looking at those. And then when we walked around with the foresters, we also saw, oh look, Derek Wiles pointed out one of the trees that was growing on a rotten stump, and then another forester noticed another one a little further back that's in a similar issue. Looks like the core of that tree could be rotten, and that the new redwood tree growing out of that is probably, or at least is at risk of being rotten in the middle. So they pointed out some trees we would otherwise have been happy to keep. We marked some trees that had split tops because some of the trees closest to the house had been topped before, and so of course once you do that, then the tops grow out unevenly. We prioritized some trees that were much too clumped and crowded, and so for the forest health. So that was how we looked at what trees we wanted to do, and we're hoping, as I said, never to do this again, although possibly some of the ones that we topped at locations where they'd been topped before, we might need to top again in 10 or 15 years. So Derek went over in some detail some of the specific concerns that were raised by our neighbor. The risk of soil erosion, the risk of habitat loss and biodiversity, and again, those were covered by the Homan and Associates biological assessment that you got. We really share our neighbors' concerns about climate change. We don't think this is a significant risk to climate or addition to climate change, but we do hope that we'll be able to add solar panels to our roof when we replace the roof next. And of course, removing some of these trees will increase our solar gain if that happens. We also are a little concerned about the fire risk. We worry that our homeowner's insurance might not renew if we don't do anything about the trees that are near the house. CAL FIRE, I already mentioned that CAL FIRE granted us a permit already to remove trees and woody debris within 150 feet of the home and outbuildings for wildfire protection. We have no streams on site. I don't know if you got the actual details of the public comment, but the public comment included a reference to 7 feet of rain that this area receives per year. I'm only aware that there's somewhere between 44 and 46 inches, depending on what site you look at. And this is less than 15% of the redwood trees on our property that are 10 inches or more in diameter at breast height. And all the trees that are being removed are on the edge of an open space. They're not, we're not thinning through the middle of the forest. The neighbor who raised the concerns has said she owns that narrow disused road on the western border of our property, which I don't know if you could put the map up again, but you can see that. I think there's one, did you go one further?
Yeah, that one, let's take that.
Oh, okay, can you blow it up a little, or not? Oh, you can probably see it. So along that western edge, there's a very skinny line of property that we actually had a really hard time finding out who owned it. The county didn't know, but our neighbor assures us that it was her. And the house that she's actually in, so the turquoise area, of course, is where our property is. The house that she's in is past, in that area over there. So we're not looking at harvesting anything over on that side of the property. We're just looking at the edge around the, which is on the southern side, along the edge of the clearing and around the house. So where she might be seeing some change, where we've skinned up the trees and taken off some of the tops, is just along that western edge that basically means that she's got a flag lot. That's not part of her yard. In some sense, it's part of her property, but it's not like within the curtilage of her home. So the bulk of her property and her house are a long way from anywhere where the trees will be cut. So I wanted to make sure to mention that. Finally, I wanted to say that I have had 2 interactions with this neighbor. Both of them were pleasant. Both of them involved her dogs. The second time I provided her dog treats and we chatted while she fed her dog the treats so that she could catch it and get it leashed. So when I got her request for a hearing from the planning department, I reached out to her because her number was on the request for hearing, and I sent her a text. And this is what the text said. Hi, Elizabeth Connolly, this is your neighbor Lynette. The county provided us a copy of your request for a hearing. Since we'll be neighbors likely for a long time, I'd like to talk about it with you. I can show you what we're doing and why, and listen to your concerns. I don't work on Fridays. Would you like to come over sometime on Friday morning? The dogs are welcome. Lynette. And so I waited for a day and a half. I sent that on a Wednesday. Then the Friday morning, I sent this response. I'm still available this morning at 10. If that time doesn't work for you, I would welcome an alternative time. Weekends and evenings are, of course, better than during the week. I didn't hear anything from her. I didn't contact her again. And in her comments, in her objections to the project, she mentions that she was being stalked with unnecessary comments by me. If that's stalking, I apologize. And if you have any further questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. I hope this helps the Planning Commission determine that the permit should be granted. Any questions?
I have one question. You mentioned that it's a 150-foot exemption, and you haven't turned that to the county yet?
I don't know if we've turned it into you yet. Oh, well, we haven't. We haven't turned it in yet.
Okay. And that's, you have a copy of it?
No.
Not with you, okay.
Okay. He's
It's
the
all
guy who's
good.
organizing that.
It's all good.
Yeah.
I was hoping you had a copy of it with you because I believe on that it says a CEQA exemption from my recall. So just wanted to,
Yeah, we didn't bring it.
no worries.
Yeah.
Are we
Comments?
ready?
So thank you. You have, if there's any public comment, you have a second bite at the apple to
Great.
make other comments.
Thank you.
So I'll open up the public comment. I'm not seeing anyone but the applicants in person here. So in Zoom, anybody want to speak? Seeing no one, I'm going to bring it back to the room. Being as there is no public comment, I'm going to take the interpretation that the applicant is not going to want to speak again. And then close public comment and bring it to the commission.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Yep.
Sorry for the late night comment. Yeah, I'm fully in support of the project. I think the one part that I struggle with is builds off of what Commissioner McFarland brought up around the use of 15304, and I guess I'm struggling a little bit on applying that CEQA exemption to some of the trees in this. And so I guess I'm trying to understand, since clearly CAL FIRE's in support of it, it's within the 150-foot. I'm just struggling a little bit to understand how that 15304 exemption applies to how that's a minor alteration. I'm just, I guess, reiterating Commissioner McFarland's question again.
Well, I mean, there is, in fact, a lot of discretion in applying those exemptions. And so we would look at, is this a significant change to the landscape? Or is this something that is pretty typical within a residential curtilage? That's really what guides us in deciding whether that exemption is appropriate or not. As you probably know, if we decide that it is not exempt and would not qualify for a categorical exemption, we're looking at a much more significant environmental document that needs to be prepared. And so that was our view, and certainly, I mean, the commission does not need to agree, but that was our assessment, that it's really not making a major change to the environment. It's not unusual for these sort of things to happen within residential curtilages, and the technical information supports that there's really no significant resources or anything that would potentially have a significant impact on the environment.
Just to clarify again, there's a fair amount of discretion. There's no sort of like threshold in guidance. Okay, thank you.
So, bringing up CEQA, and my understanding could be wrong. I'm wrong often. The permit from CAL FIRE is a CEQA exemption for the harvesting of those trees. That's my understanding of it.
That is true. That is their action, though. So we have to make a separate CEQA finding relative to the coastal development permit.
So to piggyback on that, because some people have looked at it a little bit different. Could someone in the coastal zone go get one of these fire exemptions by CAL FIRE and harvest their trees if that's all they were doing?
That would still require a coastal development permit.
Okay.
I guess with that, I'll make a motion, if that sounds good, to accept the item G6, the Lynette Chen Coastal Development Permit, and to adopt the resolution as presented by staff.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Who was in first or second?
No. Commissioner West?
Just briefly to the applicants, thank you for coming and sitting through our whole meeting and having to listen to all of our discussions. And we always appreciate hearing from the applicants, so thank you for sticking around.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Mulder?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill?
Yes.
Commissioner West?
Yes.
Commissioner Scavdall?
Yes.
Commissioner Levy?
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi?
Yes.
Commissioner McFarland?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
So report from planner, anything?
I just wanted to bring one thing up, and given the lateness at night, is that one of the things we're trying to do is go completely electronic. And I know some of the commissioners get paper, and we're trying to move away from that. And so what I think I'm trying to say is that if we really need to not continue to produce paper. So if you can receive things electronically, that would be far better. There's a number of reasons there. One is that even though we don't produce the agendas we used to, our copying costs are still exorbitantly high. Second is continuing to produce paper still has an impact on the environment. And so we will do our best to send things out and make it convenient electronically, but we really need to stop producing things in paper.
I made the switch like 4 months ago. It's been a learning curve. I will say ordinances, paper almost is a necessity, to be honest with you.
Understand. And I'm finding that is almost, and I feel handicapped here, I know Cliff does too, working with one screen, because part of being able to do things electronically is having multiple screens where you can look at multiple things, and without that, I feel like I'm handicapped.
I will just say, as somebody who's been getting it electronically for a while, there are certainly times, not that often though, but an ordinance is a good example where I want to print it out, highlight it, mark it up. So I print it out. You know, I mean, yes, it's costing me a few whatever to print that, but it's not a huge cost. So, yeah.
That's it? Okay. Planning Commission discussion items?
I think we had notes that we were going to ask staff to please send in a letter to PG&E on behalf of the commissioners to, about that easement maintenance we discussed. And then I kind of briefly mentioned, and I don't know if it falls in the same vein, but if there is a way to make an effort with BLM just to talk about their new 600-foot setback requirement, and like, is that going to be common? Maybe they did have a change in management, and just if that's possible.
We will do both.
Just checking that we do have a November 21st meeting, or that's the plan.
I think we just created that.
Yep, made a date certain.
Was the VMT reduction, was that not scheduled for the 21st?
That doesn't require a public hearing. We were going to bring it back on the 21st, but not for just one item.
Gotcha.
So we can add that onto that agenda as well.
Sounds like everything. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for accommodating me in my illness.
Thanks for
Thank you for participating.
Yeah, feel better, Ivor.
All right, I will. Thanks.